They spoke contemptuously. Just a mere mortal dares what in the world are you? He slowly stepped forward and replied, Oh, you don't know who I am. The messenger of justice fighting against the horde of demons disrupting the world. That would be me, the strongest in all of humanity. The 9-star Archmage, Lucas Trounin. Upon hearing this, they reacted fiercely. No human force dares to be hostile to us, he retorted. Such outdated thinking, you furry-mouthed beasts. When a great person like me has achieved everything in the world, he starts to want to help the world. This is just charity? A dazzling light emanated from the diamond, set in the middle of Lucas's chest. The monsters were enraged. This son of a bitch thinks he can beat us. He didn't answer anymore, but flew up and deployed a mysterious magic circle. Before the bewildered eyes of the savages, using one hand to support and supplement the magic circle, he turned back and said to them, Of course, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Suddenly, an immense power erupted, and all that could be seen was the silhouette of the young man flickering within the dazzling light. He flew out of the chaos, leaving behind an explosive magic circle for the foolish monsters. He declared heroically, Humanity is not as weak as you think. Immediately after, a cold wind brought a voice. Don't be so arrogant, Lucas Trounin. From the opposite side, a figure emerged faintly visible in the white light. He was startled and stepped back. What ouch! The one who appeared said, We are the rules of this entire world, and the entities that govern chaos. A large figure in a black cloak appeared with his powerful subordinate. He continued, We demigods are the ones you humans worship and praise. He pointed and asked, What are you? I have never worshipped you. He replied, Your actions have derailed the wheels of order and rules. Now you will no longer be tolerated. He didn't understand what order and rules. Then he mocked, Don't turn yourself into a circus. You call the current state of the world orderly and ruled. The demigod replied, Your abilities have surpassed human limits, but in the end, a human is still just a human. The cold, sharp gaze of Lucas Trounin as he looked at the demigod was enough to give one goosebumps. He was crushed in the demigod's tight grip. The arms of the monsters continuously surrounded and swallowed him whole. He struggled weakly. I can't channel mana. The demigod warned mortal, Remember this, humans are never allowed to defy the gods. That is a great sin. When you are immersed in the darkness of hell, you will doubt forever. He was gradually being completely swallowed by the demons, with only the faint echoes of his painful cries remaining. The demigod continued to speak. Doubt, and then doubt again, always doubting. Eventually, the time will come when you doubt your own existence. Return to nothingness, sink into eternal torment, and regret your existence. The fate of those who dare to scorn the gods, I will punish you with my own hands. In the present, a young man was thrown down mercilessly. He knelt on the ground in extreme agony as the bullies questioned him. Do you think we're beggars? What the hell are you doing walking around with just a few coins like this? A son of the prestigious Blake family, yet your wallet is empty? How pathetic. The young man was beaten so badly that he coughed violently. The gang leader mocked. I don't even know for what purpose you were born. As a son of the Blake family, how come your brothers are so talented while you're such trash, huh? Then he grabbed the boy's hair and continued the torture. But whatever, I like it this way. The boy screamed in pain. Ouch. The bystander stood by, indifferently watching the scene along with the bully's harsh insults. No matter how much you're humiliated, no matter how cold your family is to you, or even if you're the worst student in the Academy's history, you're still not dead. His eyes widened as he cursed. If I were you, I would have killed myself a long time ago. As he spoke, he continued to perform a series of brutal acts of torture. The teenager was filled with resentment, tears streaming down his face, unable to fight back. One of the thugs standing behind said annoyedly, This bastard really doesn't, but the leader continued. But do you know what I like most about you? He punched the boy's face again as if it were a punching bag. Is that you don't get tired of me punching you day after day. My perfect punching bag. He mounted the boy, punching him relentlessly in the face in a hidden corner of an abandoned warehouse. After finishing the beating, he grabbed the boy's hair, pulling him up and tossing him back and forth like a lifeless ball. His cronies caught the ball and kicked him in the stomach, even hearing the sound of bones breaking. The two followers behind them joined in stomping on him mercilessly. Only when they were satisfied did they leave him covered in injuries, a bruised body and a wounded, irreparable, innocent soul. He used his remaining strength to shout, Please stop, but he only received a kick to the head in response. His plea was like seasoning for their meal, only making these beasts more savage. The leader looked at him contemptuously and said, Remember tomorrow afternoon's magic practice session? You're paired with me? Don't worry, I'll be gentle. You know, I'm a good boy, right? Bullshit, I'll make tomorrow a day that will haunt you until you die. Because from tomorrow on, you won't be able to stand on these legs anymore. After saying that they left, it was also getting dark and the lights in the nearby buildings had turned on. He even waved and mockingly advised the boy, Don't loiter around, go straight home. You need to rest to have strength for tomorrow. Then he exclaimed to his fellow beasts, Man, punching him feels so damn good, even better than screwing girls. Only the boy was left crawling on the ground with trembling hands. All he could do now was curse. Damn it, shit. He yearned, I want to be stronger. Back to Lucas Trounin, who was surrounded by monsters, he suddenly came to his senses. I think I just heard something. After concentrating for a moment, I hear nothing, he wondered. An illusion. I'm about to go insane. From the abyss of sin, a giant arm reached up as if to grasp the entire sky. How long has it been? A few hundred years? No, it must have been thousands of years. Lucas Tronan, imprisoned for thousands of years, had awakened. That is the punishment for scorning the gods, he asked himself. Is this feeling fear? Then his inner self exploded even more. I want to be stronger. At this moment, nothing was more resilient than Lucas's will to escape his confinement. Perhaps this is my subconscious, not an illusion. I never knew I was this weak. He continuously talked to himself. Back in reality, the pitiful bullied student was now kneeling on the ground with a terrified face. He stammered, "Father, you just said..." Meanwhile, his father, sitting in a luxurious chair, slowly spoke the cruelest words. "I told you to get out of the family. I have no son who would disgrace the family's name like you." He silently lowered his head full of self-pity and asked, "Is being weak a sin?" He lost his patience and yelled, "Enough. You are never to ask that question again." Then he abandoned him there. The Blake family does not accept those who cannot develop their power. The boy looked up and whispered, "Frey." He looked down at the boy and sneered, "You have never existed in my life, and I have never appeared in yours." This was the sentence that completely shattered the student's heart. He knew he wasn't loved, but he never expected that to his father he was nothing but despised trash. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he held them back, not allowing them to fall. But as soon as the man left, his emotions spun completely out of control. He cried until his face was distorted. At Frey's house, a magnificent mansion, inside a dark room, the silhouette of the bullied student was slowly packing his belongings to leave the cold family. He looked at the bottle of pills in his hand as a terrifying thought emerged: suicide. His hands trembled. Is death always this scary? Meanwhile, in another dark space, the imprisoned Lucas Trounan still heard the demigod's words echoing in his ears. Doubt, doubt, and doubt again. In the end, you will doubt your own existence. He screamed, "Shut up!" then went mad. Gods, what the hell are gods? Order and rules. Is this unjust and meaningless world so precious to you? Then he laughed horrifically. So that's it. I understand now why this world is so hideous and cruel. I also know why I absolutely must not give up demigod. I will endure this place so that one day I can land a painful blow to your face. As for the young man, after doing something foolish, he began to vomit blood. While Lucas Trounan was startled, sensing something. What is this? A speck of light flashed before his eyes, a light he hadn't seen in thousands of years. That teenager had decided to die, comforting himself, just die. But Lucas screamed, "Who is that?" "Who is in my head?" A voice echoed in his ear. "I don't blame anyone. It's just that in nature, the bird that doesn't know how to fly dies first." Confused and not understanding, he quickly asked, "What did you say?" Those words still echoed in his ear. "It's all my fault. I was born without wings. It's my fault. I can't get stronger." Is it really like that? After saying that, he threw himself off the rooftop. The people around gossiped in whispers. "It must be that useless brat. Is he really a Blake?" The disgrace of West Road Academy. The words of the bully leader. "Why don't you just die? If I were you, I wouldn't have the nerve to live this long." He fell, and everyone around watched coldly. "Don't make me laugh anymore. Who are you to judge me?" He fell to the ground, but it was as if he fell right in front of Lucas Trounan. Seeing the person fall before his eyes, he panicked and struggled to break free from his bonds. The seal is gradually loosening. He also didn't understand, why is this happening? Just as that kid entered my consciousness, it felt like a warm ray of sunshine. He walked over and lightly touched the young man. "Who is it?" The boy's eyes were still filled with tears, ready to spill over. He thought to himself, if I have a next life, I will definitely leap off the ground and fly to the ends of the horizon. A place where I can look at the world from above. I hope I will have strength and a pair of mighty wings. As if by a miracle, a wonder occurred. Lucas Trounan entered the weak student at the very moment the boy drank poison, preparing to jump from the building. He stood up straight, overjoyed. "Finally, I'm back. 4,000 years. Such a long, long time." He looked at the spilled pills on the ground and understood. You are Frey Blake, the weakest of humanity, and I am Lucas Trounan, the greatest mage in the world, or I used to be. He untied his hair tie and walked forward with determination. From now on, you are me, and I am you, because you have given me freedom. From now on, in this reality, Lucas will live under the identity of Frey. He opened the curtains, and moonlight illuminated the entire room. I will give you wings. He reached out to open the window and pointed towards the moon. Demigod, you who are hailed as a god, just you wait. It won't be long. I will definitely make you pay until we meet again. Demigod. That was his warning for this return. What will happen on Lucas's path of revenge? The night was quiet with a clear moon and a cool breeze. In the middle of the empty garden, Lucas focused all his power, his entire body glowing. Lucas thought silently, his face full of worry, murmuring to himself with Frey's body, I can't use my full power. He immediately thought of a solution. First, I must replenish the missing energy and strengthen my foundation to absorb mana. Lucas Trounan frowned, speaking thoughtfully. To fight the demigods, I must recover my strength as quickly as possible. A surge of power urged Lucas on. No, I need to be even stronger than before. Now he focused his entire body, which felt like it had gained a new, powerful source of energy, slowly. This is the chance I've gotten after waiting 4,000 years. Lucas's face was full of deep thought. I must be calm and suppress my rage. For now, I must focus on my current abilities. It seemed he had found the light of hope in his life. Lucas Trounan's eyes suddenly lit up, his body emitting an endless source of energy. It seems I've reached the 5-star level. Suddenly he panicked, his eyes wide. Gah! Blood spurted from his mouth. Lucas sat panting, his face full of anger, saying the impurities accumulated in Frey's body. I have to get them out, Lucas Troughton said with a grim expression. I'll vomit it all out, not a single drop left. Then he mustered all his strength and vomited out all the impurities. On a clear, sunny day, David and Jack met happily in the schoolyard and greeted each other. Jack said, David, why are you so early today? David replied excitedly, Yo, Jack, what else? I'm just too excited for today's class. Jack's face was full of doubt as he asked David to beat up Frey. Jack said worriedly, reminding David, Take it easy, okay? Don't injure that brat too badly, David replied, annoyed, sigh. Then why did you hit him so hard yesterday? Jack's face filled with gloom and sadness, saying, Now that you mention it, I remember I saw him near the infirmary yesterday. He was running away holding a bottle of sleeping pills, David asked in surprise. Sleeping pills, Jack said he probably planned to kill himself because of you. David said skeptically, What you think he has the guts to do? That David gaining momentum challenged Jack won a bet 10 lunch tickets. In another scene, Lucas Troughton was still struggling with the impurities inside his body, his face gaunt, his breath ragged, panting, his voice weak. Damn it, how much did I just vomit? Suddenly, an unexpected surge of energy spread, startling Lucas Troughton. A solemn voice echoed. Did all of this come from the boy's body? Lucas's face clearly showed gauntness and sorrow. It seems the kid's life has gone through many tragedies, huh? Still not as many as mine. Ugh, I'm so hungry. At the West Road Academy's cafeteria, students were gathered there for lunch when suddenly everyone was startled. Everyone whispered and gossiped. What's wrong with him? He looks like he's been starving for a whole week. Lucas ate as if his life depended on it, his face full of satisfaction. Oh, so delicious, he exclaimed. This soup is so rich, it's amazing. The culinary arts have indeed evolved tremendously over 4,000 years. Nearby people were still buzzing. He's Frey Blake, right? No, how could it be? Frey continued to enjoy his meal, extremely satisfied. It just melts in my mouth. In the school hallway, Lucas seemed very confused about the changes in his life. My God, I'm this old 50 plus 4,000 and I have to study with these kids. He sighed in frustration. Sigh, Lucas, calm down and think I'm out of options. I can't make up for 4,000 years of knowledge with only Frey's memories. His eyes shone with determination and seriousness. I must understand how the current world operates. That way I mustn't be hasty, he said. Lucas Troughton opened the classroom door, attracting the cold gazes of all the students inside. David cheered loudly. Yes, 10 lunch tickets. Jack said angrily, his voice resentful. Damn it. He can't even manage to kill himself. David gloated. Teasing Jack. See, how many times have I told you to think before you bet? Jack enraged, clenched his teeth and said, Shut the hell up, I'm pissed. Lucas Troughton's face was filled with questions, his eyes full of gloomy doubt. As Lucas Troughton was walking, David suddenly stuck out his leg to trip him with a challenging expression and a sarcastic tone. So you've arrived, my dear friend. Lucas Troughton's eyes showed a contemplative look. Dear friend? Looking at David, his face was murderous. Jack, unwilling to accept his loss to David, angrily grabbed Lucas Troughton's hair and said resentfully, Hey, Frey, give me 10 lunch tickets. I lost the bet because of you. You know, Jack's tone was challenging. Compensate for my loss, you dog. His rage reaching its peak, Lucas Troughton shouted in a harsh voice, Who the hell do you think you are to hit me like that? Jack seemed to realize something, his face full of shock. He's my friend? No, that's not it. A flash in his eyes. There are people like him in every era. Lucas Troughton's whole body trembled. His limbs went limp. He wondered, what's happening? Am I trembling? His mind was filled with thoughts. I'm trembling with fear because of this punk kid. Jack went crazy and yelled in Lucas Troughton's face, Hey, my tickets. Jack raised his hand to hit Lucas, but some force sent Jack's hand flying back. Jack and David were terrified, shocked by what had just happened. The people around started to gossip. Everyone looked so confused. Huh? Look over there. Wasn't Frey standing in front of Jack just a moment ago? It's not just me who saw that, right? The girl with striking, fiery orange hair was filled with surprise. Jack turned to look at Lucas Troughton, his face full of suspicion. Lucas seemed to realize something deep and thought, Oh, so it's them. The reason you gave up on life. Looking at Jack, his face clearly showed the resentment in his heart. Ski. He grabbed Lucas Troughton by the collar. My God, this gaze. Jack swung his arm to deliver a devastating blow to Lucas. But suddenly, a source of energy erupted from Lucas Troughton's body, illuminating the entire surrounding area. Jack was sent flying to a corner of the classroom desks, and chairs knocked over, nothing left intact. Jack cried out in pain, his face bruised and bleeding. His ashen face no longer intact, Lucas stood majestically looking at the just dethroned Jack. The classmates buzzed, whispering to each other. What was that? Why did he go flying? What happened to him? He's unconscious. Lucas's expression seemed to change slightly as he looked at Jack with a thoughtful face. Oh dear, how embarrassing. I accidentally went too far with that kid Frey. I favored you too much. I, Lucas, am the strongest mage in humanity. Lucas covered his face and left in front of everyone. Seeing Jack lying in a corner, David was filled with panic. Questions began to form in his mind. Wait, what did that bastard Frey just do? There's no way he could have done that. Everyone around was in shock about what had just happened here. An image of Lucas suddenly flashed in the orange-haired girl's mind. It seemed she had discovered something. From somewhere near the classroom door, a deep, authoritative voice rang out. What's all this noise? The classmates exclaimed, Ah, Professor Dio. They began to recount everything to the professor. Professor, the thing is, Jack suddenly fainted. He's not moving anymore. The professor looked at Jack, his eyes widening in astonishment. These marks are from an attack skill activated by mana. The professor's face couldn't hide his surprise, his expression showing extreme suspicion and confusion. Even among the professors, no one is capable of doing this. Who could it be? It was time for class. The classroom had settled down to prepare for the new lesson. Professor Kevin was the teacher for the day. Professor Dio has to take care of Student Jack, so Professor Kevin will be taking over the class for today. Professor Kevin also reassured his students, Student Jack is only unconscious, is nothing life-threatening. The medical team said he will wake up tonight. So don't worry and focus on the lesson. Professor Kevin looked around the class with shifty eyes. The female students clearly showed discomfort and apprehension at his expression. Professor Kevin's mind was filled with improper thoughts. Lick, the atmosphere in this class is fantastic. There are far more female students than in other classes, especially the top-tier beauty, Isabella. Kevin stared for a moment, his gaze freezing. As if he had accidentally seen something Frey. The female students in the class were still whispering amongst themselves, clearly showing their dislike for Professor Kevin. Hey, I don't like Professor Kevin at all. His eyes always squint whenever he sees a female student. A female student nearby heard and warned, shh, don't look at him, or you'll become his target. Or, Professor Kevin stood in front of Lucas Troughton, his voice dripping with sarcasm. What a coincidence to see you here, Frey. Since when did you start attending class regularly? Kevin looked at Lucas with a questioning and curious expression. Lucas Troughton, seemingly not understanding what was happening, covered his face in exasperation. Seeing this, Professor Kevin couldn't help but be confused. He's sighing. You rare specimen, Frey. I thought from your appearance, you were a diligent student, but it turns out you're a professional class skipper. Lucas Troughton looked at Kevin and gave a forced smile. Professor, please forgive me. It's because I'm busy with something. Professor Kevin raised his voice and said, busy. The surrounding students spoke up indignantly. What a pervert, he's always bullying him. He was not pleased. With a murderous look, he asked Lucas Troughton. Oh, is that so? You mean there are things more important than my class, right? Lucas smiled brightly and replied confidently, something like that. Professor, I'm at that age where I'm curious about everything. The students around were surprised by his words. What did he just say? Hey, don't laugh, he'll notice you. Ha ha. Professor Kevin said helplessly. Ahem. I understand that at this age everyone is sensitive to everything. You're right, I'm not the kind of teacher who thinks his class is the most important thing. Kevin, annoyed, questioned Lucas Troughton again. But I have a question for you, Student Frey. The classmates worried for Lucas Troughton. He's being targeted, poor thing. Kevin began to ask Lucas a question. You always follow the class content closely, right? I'll ask you a question. If you can't even answer the simple question, I'll make you take responsibility for your disrespectful attitude earlier. Kevin's voice was harsh. First question, name 3 items once used by the Magic Battle King Cassidon. Lucas's eyes suddenly lit up as if awakened. He surprisingly asked Kevin back. What did you just say? Was it Cassidon? About 4,000 years ago in a certain forest, Cassidon appeared with a tall, muscular build, his muscles bulging. His entire body seemed to glow, carrying a powerful energy, his appearance full of vigor and abundant life. Cassidon's power radiated, making the forest tremble. Everything seemed to shatter before his strength. Cassidon breathed a sigh of relief. Hugh? Lucas suddenly approached and said, Control your power, or you'll destroy all the mountains around here. If the wild beasts lose their homes, can you feed them? Cassidon froze in surprise and turned around Lucas. Lucas replied, long time no. See Cassidon? Lucas was brought to Cassidon's home. Cassidon was still diligently practicing. Lucas, with a bored and sad expression, said, Hey, buddy. It's been a while since I visited, and you're just going to let me sit here and watch you practice your forms. Cassidon replied indifferently. I've already made tea, drink it. Lucas showed a displeased face. Damn it, you blockhead. If you keep training like this, when will you ever get married? Cassidon sighed and retorted to Lucas. You're the same as me. You don't understand a woman's heart at all? Lucas angrily shouted back, Huh? So what women only bring pain? Upon hearing those words, Cassidon suddenly strode towards Lucas with powerful and imposing steps. Love and sentimentality are toxic thoughts that stir the hearts of those who cannot control their desires. They will never be able to. Lucas, startled, said loudly, I know, get away from me, you dense fool. A dark thought flashed through Lucas's mind. Is he trying to hit on me or something? Cassidon continued, A warrior must see women as rocks. Is it any different for a mage? Oh great, archmage. Lucas Troughton. Their steadfast eyes met as if to affirm their resolute words. Lucas's face looked noticeably downcast. Lucas replied, If the rock is beautiful, then it's fine. Have some tea. Scene changed to the classroom. Frey, writhing, slammed the table and exclaimed, What magic battle! King Cassidon, you really made it, my friend. After 4,000 years, even a blockhead like you who only knew how to train all day has finally become famous. Seeing this, Professor Kevin asked Frey, What's wrong? Frey can't answer. The classmates were very worried for Frey. They gossiped animatedly. He's done for. How could we know something that's not even written in the books? That pervert is just trying to show off his knowledge. Suddenly, from a corner of the class, Isabel stood up and said firmly, I'm sorry for interrupting, Professor Kevin, but I believe the knowledge in your question completely contradicts the history of magic that we have been taught. Everyone was startled and tried to stop Isabel. Isabel, don't do it. Sit down. Frey turned around, stunned, his mouth agape. What's with her? Her firm voice, like a warrior's, is completely different from her lovely appearance. Isabel had caught Professor Kevin's attention. He looked up at her. Student. Isabel. At this point, Isabel continued. Cassidon was a martial artist. He only used mana to strengthen his body, so we cannot group him with mages. Isabel's eyes shone with determination, confident in her words. When Professor Kevin heard this, he approached Isabel, walking and talking. So according to you, Cassidon wasn't a mage. Student Isabel, are you insulting the people who are training on the path of the magic warrior? Isabel replied without a hint of fear. I think you're making a flawed comparison. Hearing this, everyone was surprised. They were all worried, for Isabel, afraid her words would provoke Professor Kevin. Hearing that two words flash through Frey's mind, insult. Cassidin's words from long ago appeared in his mind. I am a martial artist, not a mage. Lucas, are you insulting me? When I called him a magic warrior, he went crazy and wanted to beat me to death, so nostalgic. Hearing Isabel's words, Professor Kevin seemed uncomfortable. Oh, it seems we need to have a little discussion. He grabbed Isabel's arm and said, What do you think? After class, let's discuss this in my office, shall we? As soon as he finished speaking, Isabel made her stance clear. She flung Kevin's hand off her and said sternly, Professor, please be serious. Seeing what just happened to him, Kevin said in a harsh voice, Isabel, I never thought you would be so rebellious. Isabel seemed to be afraid, her face-cold sweat trickling down. Professor Kevin angrily slammed Isabel's desk, then answered the question, what items were used by the Tiger King's gauntlets, the Giant's belt, the wind necklace. To survive in this world, after 4,000 years, Lucas decided to live under the name Frey. At that moment, his voice suddenly rang out from behind, making Kevin turn to see who it was. And it was none other than Frey. He said Cassidin was a minimalist, so that's all he had, Frey thought to himself. How many times did I tell him to pay attention to fashion? But he wouldn't listen, especially that old tacky necklace. After speaking, Lucas turned around and saw everyone staring at him intently. What did I say something wrong? Professor Kevin was very surprised, his ashen face uttering the answer is very accurate. Hearing that, he exclaimed excitedly, Of course, how could it be wrong? The classmates were very surprised by Frey. That Frey kid is a bit strange today, huh? Yeah, completely different from usual. Professor Kevin glanced slyly at Isabel. However, Student Isabel, I notice you lack respect and discipline. Before he finished speaking, he moved closer and grabbed Isabel's wrist forcefully, saying loudly, Come to my office now. Isabel's eyes were filled with fear, tears welling up. Seeing this, Frey came to Isabel's rescue by asking Professor Kevin, did you know the magic Professor Cassidin used to always say something like this? Love and sentimentality are toxic thoughts that stir the heart of a warrior. A warrior must see women as rocks. Those who cannot control their desires will never be able to stand firm on their own 2 feet and will degenerate into inferior beings worse than monsters. Hearing this, Professor Kevin was extremely startled and questioned Frey. So what are you trying to say? Frey replied playfully. Nothing. I'm just reviewing the lesson. Cassidin must have been a little mistaken because I see you're still standing firm. After hearing Frey's words, Kevin's face contorted with rage as he shouted, making the whole classroom noisy, Frey Blake. That shout stunned everyone, fear on every face. Professor Kevin yelled in Frey's face, You've lost your mind after answering just one question, haven't you? Let's see how long you can keep that attitude. As I said, if you answer just one question wrong, I will make you take responsibility in front of the entire student body. Hearing this, Frey looked at Kevin without a trace of fear. Professor Kevin, his anger unabated, continued to ask questions. Next question. With Lucas's intellect living in the body of the student Frey, he easily answered all the questions the professor asked. Professor Kevin was startled and broke out in a cold sweat. Everyone around was very surprised to hear Frey's answers. Kevin had to exclaim he answered everything correctly. It's absurd. Even the history of the Age of Light, which most professors at the Academy don't fully grasp, is that really Frey, the worst student in the Academy? In that chaotic atmosphere, it seemed not to affect Frey's mood. Oh, it's lunchtime. Frey stood up, abruptly, looked straight at Kevin and asked, Professor, is there anything else you'd like to ask? It was just a fun quiz, but I'm so hungry now. Kevin's face still couldn't believe what had just happened, his whole body trembling. Just a nameless brat? How could he know the history of 4,000 years ago so well? Frey's face fell completely different from Kevin's. His eyes were murderous. Class dismissed. Frey ran out quickly, his voice unable to hide his joy. Thank you so much, Professor. It's lunchtime. It's lunchtime. Professor Kevin was lost in thought, his heart still filled with doubt. As a witness to the event from beginning to end, Isabel was still utterly bewildered. In the schoolyard, Frey was happily singing, Ooh, I always have a hungry stomach to eat all the delicious food in the world. Suddenly, from somewhere, a gentle voice was heard, and it was none other than Isabel's. Excuse me, are you heading to the cafeteria? Frey turned to look at Isabel. Their eyes met. Frey didn't reply but turned and walked away, leaving a bewildered Isabel standing there alone. He ignored me. Isabel walked slowly, step by step, following Frey. From a long distance, at this point Frey's head was down, his face annoyed. He suddenly turned his head and shouted at Isabel, My God, why do you keep following me? Isabel, with a pitiful face, only dared to reply softly, I'm also on my way to lunch. Not stopping there, Frey continued to shout, Why do you have to talk like that? It's so pretentious, Isabel calmly replied to Frey's words. My family's tradition requires me to speak formally. Please understand. In the school cafeteria, students gradually gathered. Suddenly a table appeared, piled high with food filling the entire long table. Seeing this, Isabel exclaimed, Are you going to eat all this food? Frey replied, Try starving for 4,000 years and you'll be just like me. Everyone, let's eat. Isabel looked at Frey confused. 4,000 years. May I ask what you're talking about? Frey looked at Isabel with an annoyed expression. You don't need to know, but why are you sitting here? Isabel's face showed sadness as she whispered back, Please don't misunderstand. It's just that there are no other empty seats around. Not wanting the atmosphere to become more awkward, Isabel asked Frey, You seem to know a lot about the Age of Light, don't you? Frey asked Isabel in surprise. The Age of Light. Isabel then explained 4,000 years ago, 4 great individuals created that era. It was named so because it was a time when magic was in its golden age and most developed. Didn't you notice? After hearing this, Frey paused for a few seconds, then lowered his head in exasperation. My God, to think that magic hasn't progressed at all in 4,000 years, and has even regressed. Or could it be because of the demigod's interference? Isabel said to him, that's right, this is a huge achievement. The 4 greatest people in the history of magic are Magic King, Cassidon, Great Sage Caesar Versaman, and Dark Wizard Iris Peacefounder. And finally, the most powerful and most admired magician by humans, Lucas Troughton. He is truly a great and extraordinary man. If he were still alive, I would bring gifts and ask him to marry me. Frey was shocked when he heard that, unable to contain his surprise, he spat out all the food he was chewing in his mouth. Gah! He laughed loudly, making Isabella confused. Why are you laughing? Frey laughed until tears came to his eyes. Haha, you're so young, and you're already talking about marriage. Isabella said back. Hey, don't laugh like that. Frey said back, I understand how you feel, but this old man isn't interested in children. Isabella shouted, that's rude, I never said I would marry you. At that time, everyone in the cafeteria was talking about Frey and Isabella's table. What's that? Isabella is having dinner with Frey. I saw Isabella chasing Frey just now. Is that so? The prestigious Isabella is the one being pursued? Even David gets rejected every day. Shh. David appeared out of nowhere and walked over, making everyone laugh awkwardly. David, I didn't mean anything by it. Ah ha ha. David's face couldn't hide his anger as he looked towards Frey and Isabella's table. David growled, that bastard is annoying today. Back at the table, Isabella asked Frey about Professor Kevin's question about Cassidon's 3 training methods. Frey replied, oh, it is. Isabella continued asking, according to your answer, there is assimilation, amplification, and struggle. But as far as I know, his method is only assimilation and amplification. Isabella put her hands down on the table and said sternly, can you show me the way to fight? Frey asked while eating, what level are you at? Isabella replied, I'm barely 3 stars. Frey chewed on his food and said, oh, what talent. How can you be so talented at such a young age? Isabella said, excuse me, but I noticed the way you talk makes it sound like you've been alive for a long time. Frey said, indeed, I have lived a long time. Isabella was confused. So you're not the same age as me? Frey replied while wiping his mouth. That's both true and false, Isabella asked skeptically. What do you mean? At this time, Frey had also finished eating. Wow, I'm so full. Isabella also stood up. You're done eating right. Frey turned away and said, take your time eating. Isabella shouted, wait, you haven't answered my question? What is the method of fighting? Frey turned back with an emotionless face. Read the book. The knowledge in my head is experience, not knowledge, so it will be difficult for you. Isabella opened her eyes wide and asked Frey, it's not knowledge, it's experience. Isabella's mind was filled with questions about the boy in front of her. Who are you? In the classroom, the professor told the class, today our class will practice one-on-one magic duels. To ensure fairness in the classroom, all spells you cast must be limited to level 1. David, sitting far away, thought, finally, why is Isabel talking to that idiot? Isabel sat next to Frey and asked him, hey, what exactly is struggle? Professor Jane said from the podium, this lesson will be exactly like real combat. Injuries will be unavoidable, and you will be responsible for all consequences. All students, please prepare yourselves mentally before entering the dueling ring. Frey asked Isabel, that teacher. She replied, are you talking about Professor Jane? Frey praised, she's so beautiful. Isabel shouted in surprise, what is your mind normal? How could you imagine such dirty things about a 40-year-old professor? Are you serious? But Frey paid no attention and continued to praise. So curvy, Isabel was so angry she trembled. Frey continued, look at her and learn. That's what a beautiful woman should be like. Isabel looked at him and said, even your taste is so old-fashioned. Professor Jane announced, the first match is between student David and student Frey. David swaggered over and said to Frey, how do you feel, my dear friend? I can't wait any longer. In fact, I'm so excited. I couldn't sleep. But Frey ignored him and walked towards Professor Jane. He dipped Professor Jane back in front of everyone's surprised eyes and said to her, finally, I have found a reason to wake up from my eternal dream. Professor Jane shyly called him Student Frey. He paid no mind and continued, you are everything I've ever longed for. Please don't worry, even if my body is not what I desire, but I promise my soul is mature enough to go with you anywhere. So what do you think? Isabel watched the scene and turned pale, thinking, what the hell is this creepiness? Frey brought his face close to Professor Jane's and said, could you grant me the pleasure of inviting you to dinner tonight? Professor Jane shyly turned away and said, step back, Frey, I won't warn you a second time. Frey held Professor Jane in a different pose and asked, then how about this? If I win the match, you'll have dinner with me, right? The other students hearing Frey's cheesy lines to Professor Jane were dumbfounded and said, he's crazy. At this point, Professor Jane looked at Frey with a serious expression and asked, do what, are you serious? With just a 1-star magic level, you say you want to beat the 3-star David? Professor Jane winked at Frey and said in a firm voice, all right, if you win, I'll treat you to dinner. Frey turned away and said, you promise? Only after Frey walked away did Professor Jane's knees buckle, and she sighed. As for Frey, he looked back at his recent actions and thought, what am I doing? I can't do something this embarrassing. Calm down. I can't be moved by a young person. Seeing Frey return to the ring, David asked him, are you insane, Frey? I didn't know your taste was so seasoned. Or are you trying to make the professor stop our match? Frey warmed up his limbs and replied, stop? Why would I do that? David said confidently. You must have slept well last night, huh? Do you understand the situation right now? Listen carefully. I'll start by destroying your vocal cords, and then I'll slowly break each of your legs and arms. You won't be able to escape or scream for help? It'll be a lot of fun. Frey paid no attention to David's words. He just stood still picking his nose. David, now serious, pointed at Frey and said, I told you, didn't I? Today will be the last day you live like a normal person, Frey retorted. But it seems there's no one-star spell capable of causing that much damage. David boasted arrogantly, I'm David. What the hell can't I do? You'll see, Professor Jane announced. The match begins. All the students cheered excitedly. David entered the battle and said, Stone Fury. David summoned Earth, forming it into an arrow, and flew up. The other students watching the match also shouted in amazement, Stone Fury, is he going to use that move? Isabel also said in surprise, oh no, she said to Professor Jane. Professor Jane, you said we could only use one-star magic. Professor Jane calmly replied, he is not breaking any rules. Isabel was stunned by Professor Jane's words and asked that magic doesn't break the rules. In the match, David arrogantly told Frey, this is something only the direct heir of my family can use. Representative magic. This is a powerful spell. If all conditions are met, even a one-star mage can cast it, Frey said. Without a hint of fear, representative magic used to represent the symbol of a family's power, and you intend to use it to bully others. David asked him, what's wrong? Scared now? Frey mocked David. Oh, I'm so scared, my lord. Frey used magic missile to summon a magic orb in his hand. The students watching the match were also surprised by his move. Frey looked at the orb in his hand and said, it's quite bright. Seeing Frey's move, David laughed mockingly and said, what the hell, magic missile? A gutter trying to make ocean waves, son. Magic missile versus Stone Fury, huh? That's probably the only spell you can use, right? Frey said nothing. He just flicked the orb, which flew towards David, sending him flying back and injuring him. David was severely injured, lying trembling on the ground. Everyone, including Professor Jane, was stunned that David had been defeated by Frey. David lay on the ground, tears streaming down his face, along with a wound on his neck. He could only cry, unable to speak. He could only think, I can't use my voice. Frey looked around at the pile of earth and rocks and said, what a mess. In the stands, a red-haired male student said to his blonde friend next to him, I heard this was just a C-rank magic practice session, but his blonde friend next to him said nothing. Just picked up a brick that had been thrown out of the fight between Frey and David. Frey looked at David moaning on the ground and asked, using representative magic in a practice session. Are you wearing anti-shame cream on your face, you bastard? You're blaspheming your entire family. David couldn't speak, only show his anger through his expression. Frey gave a dangerous smile and said, what were you trash talking about earlier? After destroying my vocal cords, what were you going to do? Oh, right. After speaking, Frey summoned another magic missile and said to David, slowly break my limbs, right? David, terrified, could only think, I'm sorry, I was wrong, please, damn it, my voice. Frey flicked the magic missile at David's leg, making him scream in pain. He backed away and gestured for Frey to stop. Frey asked him, what's wrong? You're the one who came up with this plan? Does it hurt? Isabel, watching from a distance, covered her mouth in fear and said, this is going too far. She called out to the professor, Professor Jane, the winner is clear. Please stop the match immediately. Professor Jane replied, student, David hasn't surrendered yet, Isabel said worriedly. But his voice. Professor Jane cut her off. Student Isabel, I have made it very clear. This lesson will be exactly like real combat, on the path to becoming a mage. You can never be weak-hearted in situations like this. You must learn to be ruthless in every duel. Isabel could only look at Professor Jane and say nothing. Frey looked at David with a terrifying gaze and said, if you want to bully others, then when the opposite happens, you must have the spirit to accept the consequences. It's because of trash, like you running around calling yourselves mages, that the world of magic is in such a sorry state. It's better if you never use magic again for the sake of a purer society. Frey smiled again, bringing his face close to David's and said in a gentle voice, just kidding, my dear friend. Did you really think I would break your limbs? He turned and reminded David, you know I'm a kind person, so I'll just stop at your legs. Seeing Frey leave, David finally dared to lie down completely, on the ground, and let out a long sigh. But Frey turned his head back and said, however, you still have one leg left. Those words from Frey made David touch his injured legs in fear. Frey used magic missile again, raising the orb high, which terrified David to the extreme. Up in the stands, the red-haired guy asked his blonde friend, what do you think of that first year? His skills are good. The blonde guy said nothing and just quietly left the stands. The students in the school were gossiping about the match between Frey and David. Someone asked, have you heard? That useless Frey overwhelmingly defeated David. Someone asked curiously, really? Another person said, my classmate told me that David was taken home with his legs and vocal cords crippled. Another person said regretfully, so his future as a mage is gone. Another person said, probably, but man, that David was a real piece of shit. With him gone, the academy's atmosphere feels so much fresher. But how did that useless guy win? He must have cheated, right? A short-haired girl pointed in another direction and said, hey, look over there, it's him. There was a buzz of gossip. Maybe he made a deal with the devil. As David was walking, the red-haired guy came up to him and asked, you're Frey Blake, right? Frey said with a suspicious tone, replying, yes, who are you? The red-haired guy introduced himself. I'm a fourth-year student, Dumon Malost. Frey's suspicion lessened as he said, oh, so you're my senior. Dumon called to him. Frey Blake joined the Troughton Guild with us. Frey wasn't sure. He asked again, Troughton. Dumon explained to him, that's right. As a student here, you must have heard of it, right? We are the students who represent West Road Academy, the Troughton Guild. Dumon held up his hand with a glowing ring and said, this isn't a guild that just anyone can join. Only students personally selected by us are eligible to join. This is the ring that symbolizes membership in the Troughton Guild. Cool, right? It's a masterpiece by the master artisan Proteus, made of pure gold. You can even leave a bite mark on it. After hearing this, Frey could only think to himself, I wonder where the copyright is when they use my name without permission. Dumont continued to talk about his guild. With this ring, you can get any job you want after graduation, which means you'll never have to worry about starving. Frey turned away and thought to himself, I just remembered in this era, my family name doesn't even exist anymore. Dumont continued to ramble on about the guild. That's not all. Don't be shocked. But the head of the Trounan Guild is none other than... Frey turned his head and walked away saying, no, I don't need it. Dumont quickly stopped him and said, wait, are you crazy? This is the Trounan Guild. Think about it again. Another voice came from behind Dumont. That's enough, Dumont. We can't persuade him like that. Dumont turned and called out Jun Hyung. Hearing that name, Frey turned his head and glanced back. Dumont bowed respectfully to Jun. Hello, Hyung. Frey and Dumont stared at each other. Jun approached Dumont and said, hello, student Frey. I think formalities are unnecessary between us. I am the manager of the Trounan Guild, Paran Jun. Perrin introduced himself. I am the manager of the Trounan Guild, Perrin Jun. I came here because I want to invite student Frey to join the Trounan Guild. Perrin and Frey looked at each other with sharp eyes. Frey thought to himself, look at that. At his age, he can already exude such an impressive, calm demeanor. But Frey waved his hand and said, I'm not interested. Even if I joined, nothing would change. He turned and walked away, waving, and said, I'm not going to copyright the name. Feel free to have fun with it. Hearing him say that, Dumont said angrily, you shameless brat, who do you think you are? Perrin raised his hand to stop Dumont, making him say shyly, I'm sorry. Perrin silently watched Frey's figure walk away. At a restaurant, Professor Jane sat before a lavish meal with Frey and Isabel. She rested her chin on her hand and said to him, it's true, I promised to treat you to dinner, but why is there a third mouth here? As Isabel was savoring a delicious piece of meat, Frey said, see, I told you to go. Put down your fork. Don't eat that. Isabel replied calmly. Please don't mind me. I'm not following you two because I feel insecure or anything. Hearing Isabel's words, Frey trembled with anger and shouted, hey, can you please go somewhere else? Even if you have a thick skin, there's a limit. Isabel said something that surprised even Professor Jane. Even though I've searched through all the materials, I still can't find any information about struggle. Since you won't teach me, I don't know what else to do. I have no other choice but to follow you wherever you go. Professor Jane asked struggle. Do you mean Cassidin's training method? Isabel, also surprised, asked Professor Jane. Professor Jane, you know about it too. Professor Jane said I've heard rumors about it in the Mages Institute, but I couldn't find any information about it in any records. You're saying student Frey knows about it. If what you say is true, then I'd like to hear more about it too. Frey drank his water, then walked over to Professor Jane, wrapped his arm around her neck and said, instead, I can teach you many more interesting things. Would you like to continue our discussion in the bedroom? Both Professor Jane and Isabel were stunned to hear Frey say that. He was face to face with Professor Jane, making her blush. She thought, my God, why am I feeling this way? With a student who's 20 years younger than me, just as they were about to move their lips closer, Isabel slammed the table, startling them. She shouted, please do not act so disrespectfully towards the professor. Professor Jane turned away coldly, blushing, while Frey said to Isabel, are you still here? After the meal ended, Frey stood alone by the railing of a bridge, lost in thought. It's hard to understand. If the demigods have full control over this world, and I'm a thorn in their side, then they should have completely erased our existence by now. But after 4,000 years, the information about Cassidine, Schweizer, Iris, and myself is almost undistorted. Why could it be that there are still people out there who have inherited our will and are fighting? Isabel walked over to Frey. He asked her, Isabel, I have a question. Who's the big boss of the school? Isabel asked him back, confused. Big boss? Have you run out of words to use? Frey pointed up and said, who cares? The strongest among the students, professors, or anyone else? Is there anyone? Isabel shook her head and said, I don't know. You wouldn't even answer my question. Frey replied confidently, you answer first, then I'll talk. Isabel asked in surprise. Really? Seeing her joy, Frey asked, are you that excited? Isabel began to speak. The strongest among the students is Paran Jun. Among the professors, it's Professor Dio Pulsman and Professor Adelia. However, the strongest of all is probably my aunt. Frey said in surprise, huh? Professor Jane walked over and said student Isabel's aunt is the director of West Road Academy, Cyrus Trisnine. She is a 6-star mage who has been granted the title of Ice Monarch by the Empire. Frey said in surprise, oh, 6 stars. Professor Jane continued, theoretically, the highest level a mage can achieve is 9 stars. However, it's been 3,000 years since anyone has reached that level. Furthermore, many have argued that the true level a mage can reach is 8 stars. In reality, there are probably fewer than 10 8-star mages in the entire world. In other words, achieving 9 stars is purely a legend. Frey turned to the riverbank, looked at the academy, and asked, so the one who cast the protection spell on this academy was also her? Professor Jane replied, who knows, it could be. Frey thought skeptically. This isn't a spell a 6-star mage can cast. Frey recalled when Paran invited him to the guild, Paran said, join the Trounan Guild. Frey thought, just as I thought. Something isn't right. Cyrus Trisnine. This woman must know something. I have to meet her. Frey called out to Isabel. Isabel. She replied in surprise, yes. Frey looked at Isabel and thought, on second thought, never mind. I don't know how far the demigod's influence extends. I won't let an innocent child get involved. I guess I'll have to find her myself, Isabel said in surprise. 7 stars. Frey looked out at the sea and said, or maybe I should reach 7 stars first? Only Professor Jane laughed calmly and said 7 stars? At the very least, it would take 10 years. No, maybe even 20 years. Frey closed his eyes and replied, if I focus on my training, I might be able to do it by the end of the vacation. Professor Jane, now startled, asked him, "What did you say?" Then she laughed lightly and said, "All right, it doesn't hurt for a person to have a little dream. Keep working hard, and good fortune will come." Frey looked at her, then walked over, wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, and whispered in her ear, "I don't just have big dreams, I have something else that's even bigger." "Do you want to check it out?" Professor Jane said shyly. "Wait." She thought to herself, "I can't. He's a student." Only Isabel, standing far away shyly, cleared her throat and said to the other two, "From now on, please watch your actions. If you continue to behave improperly like that, I will report it to her." Frey leaned against the railing, sighed, and said, "This is why I can't stand brats." Hearing him say that, Isabel asked angrily, "Brat?" Professor Jane shyly turned her face away and said, "I understand." Isabel shouted angrily, "Excuse me? Professor Jane, what do you mean by that?" Professor Jane replied, "It's nothing at all. Only Frey was left. He thought no need to rush. I have to be very careful with every move. That's the fastest way." 2 weeks later, David with an injured leg was on crutches. His voice echoed through the hallway as he cursed. "Fuck you, Frey. You dare to kill me, you dog. I don't know what tricks you pulled, but there's no way I could ever lose to a piece of trash like you. Get out here, I'll fucking kill you, Frey. You think I'm gonna let this go?" Frey was still calmly reading a book. David came to Frey's place and continued to curse, "It'll make you regret being born into this world. I'll tell my brothers to target." Before he could finish, David saw Frey casting magic missile, which sent him flying. David lay sprawled on the ground, with a disfigured nose. When class started, Professor Kevin told the class, because student David had an accident and broke his nose, his family has taken him home for emergency treatment. The students buzzed, "A broken nose." Professor Kevin said, "That's right. He will have to undergo nose surgery." Frey walked down the hallway, looked around and thought, "So boring. Well, it's true I didn't expect much from these kids, but at least the atmosphere should be a bit more dynamic. I heard this is a prestigious school. This is so disappointing. I want a few more real fights to practice controlling the mana flow in Frey's body." Suddenly, a voice called out to Frey, "You with the white hair over there, stop. I heard David was used as a floor rag by you, right? Let's have a talk. I heard you're pretty good at magic, huh, little kid?" A large blonde student walked up to Frey and said, "You piece of trash. Do you know who I am? I'm Alex Diamid. I'm your senior, and you should worship me as a god. You cheap piece of shit. One scratch from me, and you'll be smelling the grass. What did you do to David? You mess with my brother, and you're dead. You hear me? You broke his leg and his nose. Huh? You're going to pay, you son of a bitch." Frey, with a bored expression, thought, "Is this guy trying to threaten me?" Frey turned to look at the group behind him and asked, "Just to be sure, you guys are trying to bully me, right?" Alex raised his hand to hit Frey and said, "Huh, you talk back to your senior, like that, you insolent brat." Frey's face darkened with anger. He thought, "You brats?" When he didn't see Frey speak, Alex asked in a harsh voice, "What's wrong? You think you can act all high and mighty after dealing with David? Do you know I made it to the quarterfinals of the last Gay Titan Steel Arts tournament? Do you know what that means?" Frey yawned, looking bored, while Alex continued to ramble on. "It means this day next year will be the anniversary of your death, you brat." Frey said to Alex, "It's impressive how you and your buddies come to trash talk a kid smaller than you." Alex said, "Don't worry, they're just here to watch. Why would we waste our effort ganging up on a weakling?" Frey cast magic missile. The people around were all injured and sent flying. The remaining people saw the scene and screamed in fear. Alex, a cocky subordinate, said, "You cowardly dog." He was still talking. "You're not supposed to attack while someone is talking, you motherfucker." Frey looked at them and thought, a bunch of idiots. Then Frey said to Alex's group, "Yeah, my bad. My bad. I just don't understand why I'm wasting my time here watching you kids fool around." Hearing Frey say that, the group asked in surprise, "What brats, you motherfucker? You've got a death wish, don't you?" A fierce-looking man charged forward and said, "I am the eldest son of the Gillard family Golgarex." A man wearing a hat also said, "I am the second son of the Pinalax family Pre." Frey also shouted along with them, "And I am Magic Missile." As soon as he finished, he used Magic Missile to injure them and send them flying. The remaining men charged and shouted, "Get him, I am." Those people were also injured by Frey's Magic Missile and fell to the ground. The next cases followed the same pattern, I am, and they were all silenced by Frey's Magic Missile 3 times in a row. Frey sat on one of the men, looked around, and thought, so boring. They can't do anything but introduce themselves. At this rate, they're going to drag my level down. Frey lay down on a table and mumbled, "Meaningless, so fucking useless." Suddenly, Isabel's voice was heard. "What have you been up to lately?" Frey wearily lifted his head and asked, "Oh, it's you?" Isabel said, "I heard that wherever you go, you pile up bodies with Magic Missile people have started calling you the Terror Missile." Hearing that he could only think in embarrassment, Terror Missile, that sounds so embarrassing. Frey, lying on the table, writhed and said, "Well, what can I do? I don't have the opportunity to use any other skill stronger than Magic Missile." Isabel looked at Frey lying on the table and her heart fluttered at his beauty. Frey asked her, "So what do you want?" She replied, "I took your advice. When practicing drawing magic circles, I realized that I could increase their effectiveness with weasel blood. The idea of choosing weasel blood with magic essence in a 7-to-3 ratio was truly a breakthrough," Frey replied. "Oh, that try replacing it with demi-weasel blood. The effect will be even greater. Demi-weasel blood will saturate the magic better." Isabel said to him, "That's right, this is a huge achievement." She hesitated, then asked again, "So what will you teach me next?" Frey sat up, looked at her, and thought, "What's this? I never agreed to be her master, but it's fine. She has talent anyway. If I guide her properly, maybe she could reach 7 stars, no 8 stars even." Frey called her, "Isabel, I will tell you about struggle." Isabel, overjoyed, asked back, "Really?" Frey told her, "This vacation, I'm going to a remote place to train. If you come with me, you'll see struggle firsthand. However, this will be a journey where you could lose your life. If you're not confident, you can. Isabel joyfully agreed immediately. I'll go with you. Frey was also surprised by her quick decisiveness. Isabel said firmly, please let me go with you. When the vacation came, Isabel and Frey went to the training place together. Isabel carried a large backpack. Seeing that Frey said to her, we're not going camping? What is all that stuff? Isabel stammered in reply. Whoa, women have a lot of things they need. You wouldn't understand. Then she blushed and asked, by the way, where are we going? Frey scratched his head and said, I'm not too sure. I'm planning on the Hispania Mountains, Isabel shouted in alarm. The Hispania Mountains? That's not a mountain range. Don't you know it's so dangerous it's called a monster's paradise? Frey asked calmly. Do you know the way there? Isabel rummaged through her bag and said, it seems you can always surprise me. She took out a map, showed it to Frey, and said, we need it will take days to get to Hispaniola. By using a warp stone, I've heard the path up the mountain is very harsh and also filled with dangerous monsters. Frey asked her, well, are you scared? She put on her backpack and replied, please don't underestimate me. I didn't expect our journey to be so peaceful since we started. On the way, Frey walked behind her and asked, but what was that you just mentioned? A warp stone, Isabel said, just as its name suggests. It's a very convenient device for long-distance travel. Frey said curiously. There's something that convenient. So things are different from 4,000 years ago, huh? Isabel asked in surprise. 4,000 years ago? Frey thought absent-mindedly. While magic has devolved, technology has progressed. So that's why the students lack skills. They've even commercialized these warp stones. What a bold idea. Isabel turned her head and said to Frey, warp stones are indeed a convenient item, but their cost is quite steep. Frey asked in surprise, huh? Is it expensive? Isabel said, you don't know. Frey, still without an answer, continued to ask how much Isabel said. Because the distance between Calcephony and Hispaniola is quite large, it would cost about 10 gold coins. Hearing the steep price, Frey stammered 10 gold coins. He turned and searched his pockets, thinking to himself, my entire fortune is just 1 gold coin. Seeing him stop, Isabel asked, is something wrong? Frey held the gold coin in his hand and thought with difficulty. Frey, what should I do? A noble like you is in this state? Wait, Isabel is also a noble. She must have a lot of money. Not seeing Frey reply, Isabel asked again, are you not feeling well? Suddenly, Frey started dancing crazily and said to her in a sweet voice, Belle, my kind lady, how much money do you have on you? Seeing his unusual behavior, Isabel asked in surprise. Huh, what's wrong with you? She seemed to understand the issue and said, comfort makes people lazy. There's no way I'm covering travel expenses on a training trip. Frey pointed back the way they came and said, go home. Go home and bring the money here. But Isabel said resolutely, no way. Earning money for travel expenses is also part of the training. Frey shouted, are you really saying that with that huge bag on your back? Isabel didn't back down either, shouting this and that are different things. Women need a lot of stuff. Frey sighed and said, enough cut the crap. He walked on dejectedly and thought, everything will be fine if we get to the capital first, I hope so. Frey asked Isabel, have you ever had a part-time job? Isabel replied, never. Upon arriving at the port, both Frey and Isabel showed surprise on their faces when they saw the enormous ship. Frey asked, this is free, Isabel replied. Students get a special free pass. That's why there are so many students here. Hearing that, Frey looked pleased and asked, I hope there's good food. I wonder if they have meat. Isabel said, I heard they only serve high-quality food. Frey was still daydreaming meat. I'm drooling just thinking about it. I absolutely love our academy. I really do. When it was their turn to board the ship, the ticket inspector said, this ship is full. Frey asked, stunned. What the next trip is in 4 days. Hearing that, Frey fainted on the spot. But the ticket inspector said, if you don't mind, you can take the Cortez for now. Frey asked Cortez. He looked at the small ship next to it and said, it's not too bad. Although it's not bad, I feel sad when I look to the right, Isabel said. That's human nature. The ticket inspector explained the route. It will stop at Geotanbul on the way, but you will still arrive in Calcephony within 5 days, and it's obviously free for students like you. Frey scratched his head and said, yes, thank you. On the ship, 3 fierce-looking men were having dinner and talking. A man with a scar on his lip said, everything is ready, Captain? Another man with a missing eye said, excellent. Tonight we sail. Let's make it a memorable trip. The one-eyed man bit into a piece of meat and laughed. The man called Captain asked the one-eyed man, hey, why did you gouge out your own eye? It looks really painful. The one-eyed man replied, what's up, Captain? Just for fun. Don't pirates usually have one eye? It makes them look cool. The captain yelled, so that's why you gouged out a perfectly functional eyeball. Are you crazy? The man with the scarred lip said, come on, let's get down to business, everyone. The leader pointed at the map and said, today's target, the ship will stop at Geotanbul. We will target the moment they pass the Oskal archipelago. The one-eyed man grinned slyly and said, tonight's going to be a big haul. By the way, what's on that ship? The captain frowned and said, you and your eyeball. If you don't want me to smash your last eyeball into pieces, listen carefully. The ship has everything. Wow, all out young old small nobles, setters Jibu? A man, the captain says to 2 people, Isabel and Frey. This is the Cortez. Welcome aboard the Cortez. I am Captain Mac Martinez. Isabel says to Mac, please take care of us. If it weren't for this ship, we would have been stuck in the city for 4 days. Although this ship doesn't look very fancy, there are so few passengers, there's something wrong. Mac explains, this ship passes through the Oskal archipelago where pirates occasionally appear. Isabel says in surprise. Pirates, Mac reassures her. No need to worry. Although we only have 2 warships escorting us, and there is a 4-star mage on each escort ship. And of course they are mages from the Magic Academy. No matter how many pirates come for us, they will not succeed. Isabel says to Mac, a 4-star mage that's reassuring. Mac tells her, even if those bastards have brains, how could they possibly get past my 2 warships? Suddenly, everyone on the ship runs in panic and screams, Pirates? The pirates are here? A huge ship appears in front of them, Max says in confusion. That's a pirate ship, someone reports. Captain Mac, this is bad. The warships, they've been... Everyone on the ship panics and shouts, ship pirates. Someone talks about the escort ships. They've all been sunk, Captain Max says in confusion. Impossible. They sank 2 warships. That's not something ordinary pirates can do. The pirates on the other side are cheering joyfully for taking down Mac's warship. A few minutes earlier on the pirate ship, a subordinate says, Captain, they're in our sights. The ship Cortez is here. The one-eyed guy yells, quiet. That person will take care of them for us? But the one-eyed guy sees something and yells again. There are 2 warships there. What do we do? The captain says, quiet. That person will take care of them for us. The captain points towards the bow of the ship where a mage in a black robe is standing. He introduces, that's a special guest for today. He was very difficult to get. That demon-faced mage says in this society, diligence makes up for lack of talent. Unlike those types who want to eat without working. The captain continues. Remember that person is the Lich Lord Dullard. He is a special person who can help us in this raid. That demon-faced mage says then they'll just have to eat dirt. The one-eyed guy looks impressed and gets slapped on the head by the captain who says, you idiot. The one-eyed guy rambles on. An undead, I've only heard about them, but seeing one for real gives me the chills. It's like I'm having a nightmare. I thought our captain would finally go crazy when he heard we were going to attack the Cortez, which is being escorted by warships. But the captain, standing beside him, threatens, go on, but you might lose your other eye. The one-eyed guy flatters I didn't expect you to make a pact with a Lich captain. You truly are a pioneer, a trailblazer in pirate history. The captain, enjoying the flattery, laughs and says, You think so? That's right. Suddenly the Lich yells, Ice Lance. Suddenly, a magic circle appears on Mac's warship, causing the mages to say in bewilderment, What's that? The 2 mages fight with all their might. But the continuous assault of ice lances causes heavy damage to the ship. Seeing this, the captain laughs delightedly and says, Let's go make some money. The pirate subordinates shout loudly, Awesome. The captain walks over to the Lich and praises him. That was really impressive, Lord Dullard. You destroy those large warships with just 1 shot. The Lich turns and growls, making the captain think fearfully, Damn, I'm so scared. The Lich looks at Mac's ship and says, There were 3 ships. I'm sure I summoned 3 ice lances. But how is that ship still afloat? The captain kneels with his hands clasped and says, Lord Dullard, it's not that we're being disrespectful. I'm sure I told you about our situation. That you shouldn't attack that ship. We need to use the passengers on board as hostages. The Lich growls, causing the frightened captain to quickly admit his mistake. I'm sorry, my fault. The frightened captain thinks this skeleton head is so short-tempered. The Lich says I attacked them to prevent them from escaping, or resisting blood will be shed if they resist further. But it wasn't strong enough to sink the ship. The captain, not understanding the issue, asks, What are you trying to say? The Lich turns his head and says, There's something unusual on that ship. Back on Mac's ship, Mac is reassuring everyone. Students, please remain calm. Please follow the crew's orders. In the chaotic crowd, a person wearing a hat is sitting in the corner of the boat looking mysterious. Isabel says to Frey, The warship has been destroyed. Seeing Isabel's worry, Frey pats her head and reassures her. Calm down, they're just pirates. What worries me more is hearing him speak so calmly. Isabel thinks to herself, just pirates. Frey says there were 3 ice lances, but the one aimed at this ship disappeared in midair. Isabel asks worriedly, Did you intervene? He says it wasn't me. Frey thinks, although I can feel the mana fluctuation, I couldn't stop it. Frey, I'm not that different from you, kid. Frey thinks back to 4,000 years ago. My mind went blank as soon as I felt the demigod's curse. The memories of being sealed for 4,000 years also put me in a similar state. Frey suddenly trembles, clenches his fist, and thinks, though they are similar. It's not like the demigods, it's undead mana. Isabel asks him, If it wasn't you then who blocked it, Frey says dejectedly, who knows? Although we don't know who it was, we should thank that person for protecting the ship. The ship is attacked, causing everyone on board to scream. The pirates have boarded the ship. The students scream. Pirates? The pirates are invading. Help me, they're pirates, Mom. The pirate captain's group has boarded the ship. The one-eyed guy says the ship doesn't look that big, but there are a lot of passengers. A few people from noble families. 1, 2, 3, about 40 of them. We could spend the rest of our lives without having to work again. The pirate captain says to everyone on board, Good evening, my dear students, with lots of money and big dreams. We're all friends here, aren't we? And we are the Blood Red Raiders pirate crew. On the ship, Mr. Max says to the pirate, Do you have any idea what you've just done and what kind of ships those 2 were? The arrogant pirate captain says, Of course I know you're a treasure trove, full of relatives of wealthy families. Hearing this, the pirate subordinates laugh with delight. Suddenly, a student stands up and yells at the pirates, How dare you filthy pirates say such a thing? The pirate captain is stunned to see someone bold enough to stand up and say that. The student continues, It seems you don't know what you've gotten yourselves into. This ship is full of outstanding students. One day they will become great mages. Unfortunately for you, you've chosen the wrong ship to attack. Mr. Mac quickly stops the student. Wait. The student is about to cast a spell and says, In the name of justice, the power of friendship will overcome everything. Before he could do anything, the student had a pirate's dagger pressed against his neck. The pirate captain says, You don't know what you've gotten into, kid. You act like we're going to wait for you to finish your chant before we strike. The student with half-blonde hair looks at the dagger, trembling with fear. While everyone on the ship is terrified by what just happened, Frey notices something and thinks, What? The dagger should have stabbed his neck, but its trajectory was slightly off. People's panicked screams ring out. Why did it have to be this ship? Help. Frey observes a person in a hooded cloak with their face completely covered and speculates, is it him? The one who blocked the attack aimed at this ship. The person in the hooded cloak comes before the half-blonde student and says, they are not people you can face. Don't get yourself into trouble and just sit down quietly. The one-eyed guy asks the pirate captain, why did Hai miss that chance? The captain replies, shh, be quiet. I deliberately missed because they are valuable hostages. Now I won't be a nuisance for long. As he finishes speaking, the pirate takes 3 arrows and prepares for action. He says, I'm getting serious, and we'll finish this quickly. He aims at a person with glasses and says, all right, that 4 eyes, use him. The student with glasses fearfully collapses to the ground and trembles, saying, please don't. The student with glasses was so scared he peed his pants. The pirate pinches his nose and says, oh my, our little baby has been very naughty, hasn't he? Then he orders his subordinate, give him a bath. The subordinate quickly replies, yes, sir. The pirate with the scarred face slings the bespectacled guy over his shoulder and says, he's heavy. The person in the hooded cloak suddenly speaks up, stop. But it was too late. The guy with glasses was thrown into the sea. He struggled in the water and shouted, help me, please. He struggled for a while and then slowly sank. A brown-haired person standing on the ship looks out and says, to kill a 2-star mage so cruelly. Now everyone on the ship is even more terrified. The pirate captain finds it too noisy and picks his ear. 2 people, one with blue hair and one with brown hair, cast a spell and shout, you despicable pirates, how dare you do this to Orca? The pirate captain blows lightly on his finger and says, I'll talk, why don't you jump down so noisy? The blue-haired and brown-haired individuals cast a spell at the pirate, but a shield appears around him blocking their attack. The blue-haired and brown-haired individuals are surprised. The brown-haired person yells, what? The 2 of them are even hit back by the pirate with a stronger magical force, sending them all flying. The one who cast that spell was the Lich. The blue-haired person sees the Lich and says in fear, that's impossible, it's a Lich. Isabel, standing next to Frey, also says in surprise, that's really a Lich. Mr. Mac also says in surprise, that thing you made a pact with an undead. Do you even realize what you're doing? The undead never make pacts with humans. It's clear you're being controlled by it. The pirate laughs arrogantly and says, we don't care about anything but money because we're pirates. Max says, are you crazy? Money, is that important to you people? In another corner, a frightened Isabel tightly grips Frey's arm. He wants her to let go and says, ow, ow, let go of me. It's hot. I also feel it's a bit damp since we're in the middle of the sea. Frey looks down and sees Isabel trembling and crying. She says, those people aren't just pirates. This is a nightmare. For a Lich, they should be at least 5-star. Now I understand why the 4-star mages couldn't resist. The Lich suddenly says something that startles the pirate captain. Come out. You who blocked my magic, show yourself. I know you're one of them. Reveal yourself now. If you keep trying to hide, I will kill everyone immediately. The Lich casts a spell, and ice arrows appear in the sky, just waiting for the Lich's command to shatter the ship. The frightened pirate captain stands behind the Lich and says, yes, Lord Dullard? You can't. The Lich turns and glares, causing the frightened pirate to turn away, thinking he's really terrifying. The person in the hooded cloak steps out. The Lich asks him, are you the one who blocked my magic? He replies, yes. The Lich says, state your name. The hooded person takes off their hood, surprising everyone. Frey also says in surprise, huh, what's this? The blonde-haired person says, my name is Perrin June. Isabel says in surprise, Perrin June. Frey asks her, you know him? Isabel replies, there's no student in the academy who doesn't know about student Perrin June. He's the captain of the Trawman, and the biggest hotshot in the academy, and the legitimate son of one of the 3 most powerful families in the Empire, the June family. Frey feigns surprise. Oh, is that so? Isabel continues. His grades are also very good, so he and I are always competing for the top spot in the academy. Frey furrows his brow and asks her, are you bragging? Isabel quickly laughs it off and replies, no, not at all. Although our grades are similar, his potential must be several times higher than mine. The female students on the ship are also admiringly saying, Lord Perrin June. Lord Perrin June is on our ship. It's really Lord Perrin June, thank God we're saved. Isabel continues to tell Frey it's very likely Perrin June who neutralized the Lich's magic. He might actually be able to solve this problem. Frey says seriously, don't get your hopes up. Isabel asks in surprise, why do you say that? Frey looks at Perrin and says, he's having a hard time just standing up straight right now. The Lich is at least 5-star, and although that Perrin guy seems to have achieved enlightenment and is expelling impurities from his body, he just reached 5-star a moment ago. The fact that he can hold on like this is already very good, dealing with someone of a higher level. Isabel asks him worriedly, so what do we do now? You talk as if you're at a higher stage than that. Lich Frey calmly replies, I'm not. He turns to look at Isabel standing close to him and says, move away a bit, it's still hot. Perrin, who is trembling because he can't stand steady, thinks I shouldn't have chosen this ship. It seems choosing a ship without any noticeable students was a bad idea. I was just lucky to block it, but my body feels like it's about to shatter. Just from taking that one blow, I can't deal with him. The Lich looks at Perrin and says, I'm really lucky today. Hearing that, the pirate captain exclaims in surprise, what? Only Frey is paying attention to Perrin. He thinks, I'm starting to like this guy more. That's an impressive spirit for someone his age. Frey unconsciously says the bright future of the country. Isabel doesn't understand what he said and asks again, what was that? The Lich says excitedly, I refuse. At your level, that source of mana is magnificent. Perrin is startled when he hears the Lich say that black streams of energy from the Lich start moving towards Perrin to attack him. The Lich says excitedly, I will absorb every last drop and use your body to create an undead for me, to control you or mine. Perrin is bound tightly in midair by the lich, screaming in pain. The pirate captain looks pleased. He says, got it. Negotiations are off. Bring them to our ship one by one. Everyone on the ship runs in panic and shouts loudly, help, please. The pirates harass the girls who say in disgust, no, let go. I'm going to puke. The one-eyed guy stands watching and laughs, happily saying, good, very good. The one-eyed guy looks around and says, let's see, I should also pick an extremely cute one. He targets Isabel and approaches her saying, want to play with me for a bit, sweetie? Don't worry, I'll be gentle. Then the one-eyed guy turns to Frey and says, you there? Can you scram over to the other side for a bit? Frey turns left and right, and then asks the one-eyed guy, me? The one-eyed guy says menacingly, yes, it's you, I'm talking to you. Frey puts his hands on his hips and says to the one-eyed guy, you little brat, you'd better watch that attitude. The one-eyed guy being spoken to condescendingly by Frey gets even more excited. He laughs and replies, what? Quite something, you little devil. Is it time for a beating? What do you think you can do? Come here. The one-eyed guy cracks his knuckles, looking like he's about to fight Frey. But Frey says seriously, you're the one who should come here. Who are you to order me around? Isabel is stunned and surprised to hear Frey say that. The students tied up in the corner of the ship are also surprised when Frey says that a fat guy says, what did that guy say? A blonde student also says, don't add fuel to the fire. Jack yells, Frey, are you getting delusional because of your recent fame? Just shut up, you idiot. Frey recognizes Jack and says, it's you. Long time. No see. How are you? The one-eyed guy angrily charges at Frey with his sword and yells, guess who's going to die first in this situation, you white-haired brat? This moron doesn't realize who he's up against, does he? When the one-eyed guy's sword is close to Frey, Isabel screams in fear and turns away. But Frey, with just one move, injures the one-eyed guy, making him cough up blood and fly backward. He says to the one-eyed guy, is that so? Then do you know who you're up against? The one-eyed guy is sent flying into the sea to everyone's amazement. A student yells, what was that? Isn't that Frey? The failure of our academy. Perrin looks at Frey and says, just a moment ago, he kicked his opponent before the blade could touch him and amplified his mana rapidly. That was an astonishing speed that even I couldn't keep up with. I knew he was also very strong, but I didn't think he could control mana to such an unbelievable degree. Isabel, having just escaped danger, calls out Frey. Frey seriously touches Isabel's head to make her look straight ahead and says, don't panic too much. Look closely. None of them are stronger than you except for the lich. You should also know how to protect yourself, all right, mage. The pirate with a scar on his mouth says what just happened. Then he sighs and says, that damn one-eyed idiot, did he trip over his own feet because he was too excited? Frey, using his lightspeed movement, appears right in front of the pirate, who screams in shock. What the hell? The lich, who has been observing everything, thinks to himself, so fast. As fast as lightning, Frey punches the pirate straight in the stomach and says, you should have agreed when Perrin wanted to negotiate. The powerful punch makes the pirate scream in pain. Frey calmly says, I'm not like him. Not so gentle and kind. Looking at my appearance, you might think I'd never kill anyone. The pirate's subordinates call out in terror, Vice Captain. Another one angrily curses Frey, you son of a bitch. Frey continues, but for trash like you, I've never considered you human. The pirate dies a miserable death. Their subordinates charge forward and say, so you think you can take us down? Kill him. Frey calmly uses magic to take down all the pirates in front of him. A few other pirates charge from behind him and shout, pincer attack. But they are all knocked to the ground by a single blow from Frey. The pirate captain stutters in fear. No, impossible. Frey continuously unleashes moves, taking down the pirate's subordinates one by one. The students also say in surprise the pirates are no match for him. The pirate's screams echo my hand. A pirate holding a female student hostage also says in alarm, what the hell? The female student also says fearfully, leave me alone. But Frey uses his light speed movement to rush over and give the pirate a painful kick. The remaining ones also charge at Frey at the same time and say, surround him. The pirate stands stunned and says, why are you guys squeezing each other? That's enough, I have to kill him. I definitely will. Before he could finish, Frey strikes down from above, causing them to scream before they can recover. What the hell is this? What is this bastard doing? You son of a bitch, you're playing dirty. Frey strikes them and then slowly lands, standing firm on the ship. Another pirate takes Isabel hostage and yells, stop fighting, you monster. Don't move. If you move even a finger, I'll make this one's head leave her neck. Frey calmly asks, what are you going to do next? Isabel silently counts 1 plus 1s, 2, 2 plus 2 hours 5, 5 plus 6 bar 10. Then she yells, thunder strike. A lightning bolt strikes the pirate, who is defenseless, and he is severely injured, lying sprawled on the ground. Isabel stuns everyone. She turns and asks Frey, how are my skills? Frey replies with a look of pride. This kid, why pretend to be so gentle when you're so talented? He says, well done, that's impressive. Aren't you the one escorting those students? But this time you've acted and revealed that disguise? Looks like I've been played, huh? The pirate looks at Frey and says, let's make a deal. I know you're not an ordinary person, but will it be difficult for you to clean up everything here by yourself? Frey smirks and says, and so. The pirate, with a dangerous expression, states his condition. I'll take exactly half of the students here. What do you say? A deal? The students on the ship start to whimper. Mom, I don't want to die. The pirate says, you're interested, aren't you? You can save face while we make a little profit. This is for mutual benefit, little brother. Frey says seriously, you're truly rotten to the core. You call that mutual benefit, even though I've killed some of your crew. The pirate acts unconcerned and says, you can decide for yourself who to keep. Little brother, exactly half. Suddenly, a blonde girl rushes out from behind the pirate towards Frey and shouts loudly, Me, choose me, Frey. I'm begging. You please choose me. I'll definitely repay you and I'll add 100 gold coins, okay? If that's not enough, I'll do anything you ask, so please. Another student joins in begging Frey, me too, pick me, Frey. Here's 150 gold coins. The others also rush up one by one saying, pick me, I'll give you 200 gold. Frey feels he has many options. He says, this is difficult. What should we do, Isabel? Take the money. I don't even have travel expenses myself. Isabella angrily shouts, you can't do that. The students call out numbers one after another. The highest bid is 200 gold. Anyone for 250. The students compete, saying, I'll give 300 gold, 4,000 gold. Isabel shouts from a distance. Why is there an auction here? The students argue, choose me. My life is worth more than the others. No, it's me. Frey, the eldest son of the lion family, has a long history. Don't be ridiculous. I am a genius who will become a minister of this country in the future. Frey, when I succeed, I will appoint you to a high position. Think carefully who will bring you greater benefits. Isabel is also surprised by the student's words. Frey, having heard enough, says, that's enough. It's deafening. You're not going to stop, are you? The blonde female student who had been holding his arm from the beginning is also pushed away by him as he says, get away. It's too hot. Stop hugging me. It's annoying. Frey begins to lecture the students. You really learned how to use money at a very young age, didn't you? But is that your money? Or is it the money your parents earned after working so hard, you young people? Wanting to be a mage just for the title is truly disgusting. Is this how a mage should act? Listen carefully. A mage is a hero who protects the weak. No matter how life-threatening the situation, a mage always saves others before themselves. Understand? Isabel, hearing him say those things, is moved and calls out Frey. But the last sentence Frey says makes her even more annoyed. Seeing you all offering so much money here, Isabel yells, are you bipolar? In another corner, the pirate and the lich are standing and watching Frey's group. The pirate looks at the lich and thinks he's so silent. Maybe the skeleton head can't beat that guy either. The lich suddenly says, absurd. There is no human I cannot defeat. The pirate thinks in fear he can read my mind. So why didn't he answer me, this empty-headed, Lord Dullard? The lich says I was simply observing for a moment. The pirate sighs in relief, thinking, damn, I should be careful about what I think. The lich continues, that guy's mana shines so brightly, I've never seen anything like it before. He looks like a talented magic warrior. But in the end, he's only 5-star. He can't compare to me. The pirate says fearfully, I knew I could trust you, Lord Dullard. The lich looks at Frey and says to him, I have killed countless magic warriors like you. Give up, and you will be mine. Frey warms up his shoulder joint and says, creepy, you talk just like a demigod. The lich casts a spell saying death magic. Isabel says in surprise, that spell. The lich shouts, die. Black smoke streams accompanied by arrows rush towards Frey. Isabel reminds him, be careful, Frey. That's a tracking spell, so it will keep following you. Frey does a flip in the air and replies, I know. Perrin watches the fight and thinks too dangerous. The tracking magic isn't controlled by Dullard, but moves on its own. Because he is the target, Dullard can still cast more spells now. The lich uses another spell, Bone Hand. Creepy hands rise from below, heading towards Frey. The pirate captain shouts, that's right, get him. Isabel screams Frey's name when she sees him being attacked by the lich's hands, Frey. The lich uses magic to attack the other students. Isabel doesn't stand still either. She uses magic to block it. She looks to where Frey was standing. When the smoke clears, the side of the ship is shattered and Frey is nowhere to be seen. She screams, Frey, Frey! Isabel calls out loudly, Frey! Answer me, Frey! Perrin, who is tied up, watches Isabel with a disappointed expression. Suddenly, from under the ship's side, the arrows from the lich's death magic suddenly turn around and attack the lich. The lich quickly uses a magic circle to defend against the arrows. And even more strangely, the bonds the lich had placed on Perrin also disappear. The lich says in surprise, how could this happen? Death magic is supposed to target magic warriors. Once the target is dead, it self-destructs. So why am I the target? Frey suddenly appears behind the lich, surprising everyone. Isabel, seeing him, asks Frey, are you okay? Hearing that the lich yells, what? Frey is behind him, turning in the direction the lich is looking for him and says, you look good from behind too, because I don't want to see your ugly face. The lich spins around but still can't see Frey. He thinks impossible. He dodged attacks from all directions and appeared behind me in the blink of an eye. The lich flies into the air and looks down at Frey. The lich thinks, how does this guy know my movement patterns like the back of his hand? He must have calculated at least 5 of my different movement paths. Even I can't do that, and that's not something a human can do. Frey looks at the lich with a terrifying gaze. Isabel calls to him, Frey, are you okay? Isabel seems to see Lucas's silhouette in Frey. She freezes, thinking Frey. Perrin looks up at the sky and says loudly, they are ice lances. That's the magic that sank the warships. The lich uses ice lance and thinks I have a bad feeling I must destroy the ship to be safe. And that kid's mana will never withstand this pressure, but he has no other choice. The lich suddenly sees a barrier on the ship holding back the ice lances. The lich yells, what is that giant barrier? That barrier is because Frey is casting a spell below the ship. The lich screams in fear. No, it can't be. The lich thinks he blocked it. This isn't in theory, Perrin says in awe, unbelievable. I even coughed up blood just from blocking one lance. Isabel thinks, who is it? The lich summons a larger ice lance. He yells down from above, you inferior human. Seeing this, Perrin says worriedly, that's an unimaginably large ice lance. The lich attacks the ship and yells, die human. But Frey jumps up and pierces through the giant ice lance. What the lich couldn't have imagined was that Frey was standing right in front of him. Isabel and Perrin hold the shield together to protect the ship. The lich says impossible. A measly 5-star can be on par with me. Frey calmly says that's because I've walked that entire path. The lich says angrily, what What a five-star person like you talks as if you're so experienced. Frey takes a deep breath and says, come on, hit a little harder. I've been eager to use magic stronger than a magic bullet for the first time in a long while. The Lich yells, who are you? Your true identity? Frey replies, Frey Blake the talentless one from West Road Academy, or so they used to say. Frey says softly, the strongest mage in history. Isabel looks up and asks Paran, what are they talking about? Paran replies, I can't hear them clearly, they're too far away. The Lich yells insanely, stop spouting nonsense. Lucas Trauman is dead. Frey appears behind the Lich and says, indeed, you look much better from behind. Frey suddenly thrusts his hand through the Lich's chest and grabs his heart, saying, life as long as this is intact. You won't die, right? Its location depends on the individual. So it took me a while to pinpoint the exact position, the Lich says in pain. Wait. The pirate captain below looks up at the sky and says in fear, huh? What died so fast? Wasn't that the undead? Why is it like this? Frey appears behind the pirate captain, making him tremble in fear. Frey says, no need to be fancy anymore, right? The negotiations end here. All of you must die here. The ship is now a mess, littered with corpses. After defeating all the pirates and the Lich, Frey flicks his hand and looks at everyone. When the ship docks, as Isabel and Frey are walking, Paran's voice comes from behind. That was truly powerful strength. I'm very impressed. Frey says nothing. Thing turns his head and continues walking, ignoring Paran. Isabel thinks he's ignoring even him. Suddenly, Paran bows deeply and says to Frey, you saved my life. I will never forget this favor. Isabel speaks on Frey's behalf. Please don't be like that. Raise your head. Frey sighs and then says, how are you? Your internal organs must be in turmoil after blocking all of the Lich's magic right. Paran says, I'm fine. Actually, I feel refreshed after vomiting out that dirty blood. Frey laughs and says, come on now. Isabel reminds him, why are you so rude to the June family? As they walk and talk, Paran asks him, Frey, what happened to you? You easily defeated a Lich that even the Empire's mages would have trouble dealing with. Frey Blake. I've heard your name. You're famous for being the most useless student in West Road's history. Frey calmly replies, who knows, that's life. No one can predict anything. The two of them look at each other, and then Paran says, yes, that's right. Arriving at a house, Paran says to Frey, aren't you going to visit our house? I want to show my gratitude. Isabel suddenly thinks an invitation from this special person. Isabel, with a cute expression, begs him to accept Paran's invitation. But Frey says, maybe when I'm free? Isabel says loudly in surprise, what? Are you crazy? That's the June family. The June family. There are so many nobles out there trying to approach them in any way possible, even the smallest. And now you're here answering, maybe when I'm free. Frey suddenly thinks of something. He turns to Paran and says, oh, right, Paran. Can I borrow some cash, about 20 gold? Isabel angrily growls, Frey, how dare you? Frey turns back to ask her, what is it this time? Isabel yells, how can you ask for money with that excuse? Can't you act like a mage with some decency? Frey replies, oh my God, you're hilarious. Whose fault do you think it is that we're in this situation? Who told you not to bring a single penny? Paran raises his hand to interrupt them and says, I don't mind asking, but why do you need money? Frey quickly says, to use the Hyperstone to get to Cow Symphony. It's very expensive. Isabel quickly tries to stop him, but it's too late. Paran asks in surprise, a Hyperstone. So that's the reason you're going to the capital. Paran opens his pouch and says, here. Since it's to show my gratitude, there's no need to pay me back. Paran gives them 3 gold coins, each worth 100, making both Frey and Isabel exclaim, sugoi sugoi, 300 gold. Frey takes the money and shyly says to Paran, come on, who does that? I only need 20 gold for the road. Paran says, it's all right, it's just small change. Just take it all. Frey thinks to himself, so rich but so kind. Frey and Paran walk down the street. Paran says to him, that's why I wanted to invite you over. And when I get home, I also have to talk to my fiancé. I'm sure that if I go home now, there will be a lot of things to prepare, and all Frey cuts him off. All right, don't show off. Paran touches his hair and says, don't say that it's not easy to hear. My father decides everything and forces me to follow his orders. Frey quickly asks Paran, so does the person you mentioned have a sister? Paran quickly explains to him, I heard that she's from the kingdom of Luanoble. Frey eagerly asks, none of that matters. Whatever she is, she's fine. Isabel yells from behind, please, have some dignity. As they walk, Paran continues, she is the daughter of the Aquareed family. They say it's a special family that has produced countless skilled knights. But I'm not sure if we'll get along. I'm sure they'll be disappointed to find out that the fiancé is a weak mage like me. Isabel praises him. Is that something the top student should say? You're not weak. Frey suddenly calls Paran back. Paran, don't lose confidence. Good looks are 90% of it. Strength is only 10%. Paran smiles and replies, thanks. Paran suddenly bursts out laughing. Frey and Isabel are both surprised. Paran says, hey, I don't know how long it's been since I last laughed like this. You two are really funny. Arriving at the bridge, Paran says goodbye to the other two. He says, Frey, I have to go now. You must visit my family sometime. I don't want to live the rest of my life as a bastard who can't show gratitude. Frey replies, of course. When I'm free, Isabel is once again left speechless by Frey's answer. Isabel watches the two of them say goodbye and is moved, thinking, what a beautiful sight. It's as if they've been friends for a long time. After parting with Paran, Frey and Isabel continue on their way. Frey says to her, he's a good person. That's what nobility should be. Isabel also replies, truly wonderful. Frey thinks about the money Paran gave him, laughs and says, and he has deep pockets too. Isabel's face darkens once again as she says, yes, I'm terribly sorry for not having a single penny. The two of them just stand there arguing on the bridge. Isabel's transformation left everyone astonished. She shyly asked everyone, how do I look? Am I gorgeous? Frey, thinking she looked a bit over the top, pouted and criticized, go home to your mother. She didn't understand and asked back, what's wrong? As if he'd been itching for this, he bristled and yelled right in her face. What's the point of dressing like Lady Gaga to train on a mountain? Pick something lighter and easier to wear for me. Hearing that, she fumed, her face turning red with anger. She yelled back with all her might, I know, but look at all this stuff, what woman wouldn't want it? Hearing that, he scolded her again. Huh, what right do you have to be mad at me? The shopkeeper on the side quickly intervened. Perhaps your companion isn't used to that minimalist style? Meanwhile, he glared at her, thinking to himself, I shouldn't have brought her along. Isabel, on the other hand, angrily turned away to another spot. A while later, after they finished picking out clothes, they left the shop. Her outfit had been changed to a much more comfortable and active one, but it seemed she wasn't very happy about it. Frey held up the bag in his hand and said happily, I can't believe such a wonderful thing exists in this world. A spatially enchanted bag that can hold 10 times more inside than it looks from the outside. While he was excited about his new item, he heard her sarcastic remark, Is this the first time you've seen something like this, country bumpkin? It's nothing to be amazed about. He scowled and replied, If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. She retorted, Nonsense. Suddenly, Frey let out a sigh. Besides the teleportation stone, modern technology has changed a lot compared to my time. The population has probably increased significantly too. However, it hasn't changed much from what I imagined. It wouldn't be wrong to say that there hasn't been much progress compared to 4,000 years ago. I suspect the demigod has interfered with humanity's development to some extent. But how? Could it be that he didn't want to stop humanity from growing stronger? No. They viewed humans as a bunch of mindless insects with no potential. On the way out of town, looking at the bustling city scene around him, his mind was filled with a constant stream of difficult questions. Isabel beside him suddenly interrupted his train of thought, asking, What are you thinking about? That's making you so tense. We're at the teleportation stone. He resolved, I'll have to find the answer myself. Before them appeared a large courtyard with glowing stones arranged in an elaborate pattern. The announcer stood on a high platform holding a megaphone and shouting, The teleportation process is about to begin. All passengers, please do not stick your hands or feet out of the magic circle. Frey said with great excitement, Impressive. They've divided it into many different areas. Oh, so the teleportation machines are those stones? So cool. Isabel, hearing him from the side, felt embarrassed for him. Stop it. You're embarrassing me. There were many people standing and waiting for the teleportation. Frey even turned to remind Isabel, be careful. Those who aren't used to it will get dizzy after teleporting. She snapped back irritably. I don't need you to remind me, it's obvious. Before she could finish her sentence, the machine activated the teleport, leaving her only able to stammer. They seemed to pass through a spatial tunnel with a blinding light ahead. The machine in an undefined space. A short while later, it successfully teleported. Frey stared in awe at the orange sky before him. We've arrived Hispania, a town at the foot of a mountain. He quickly realized that this place hadn't changed at all after 4,000 years. He turned and asked, Where do we go now, Isabella? As for her, she was in a miserable state, sitting in a corner, and constantly meeting Sister Hugh, a Vietnamese euphemism for vomiting. He could only stand and watch, saying, I told you, if your constitution isn't strong, it's normal to get dizzy. She still managed to argue back. That's because I haven't had breakfast. He could only remain silently speechless, not bothering to say more. While she was meeting Hugh, she called out, Don't look down on me. Frey lamented at this moment. I really shouldn't have brought this kid along. They entered a luxurious inn, where guests were bustling about eating and chatting. The innkeeper was an old man, carefully wiping each precious bottle of wine on the display shelf. Suddenly, a voice reached his ear. 5 servings of bread with meat, lots of meat, and some beer. He was a little startled by the sudden call. The person who just ordered was our main character duo. In contrast to the male lead's look of enjoyment, the female lead stammered, beer. Then she bristled. Frey, why are you drinking beer? You're still a student. He closed his eyes, not bothering to argue, and replied, Be quiet. Do you know how long it's been since I've had beer? Why don't they sell beer at the academy? Hearing him say that she could only shiver, she screamed, It's so obvious the rules don't allow students to drink beer or alcohol. He just replied coolly, What's the big deal? In my time, kids over 13 drank beer instead of water. She retorted, Don't you lie. The old man brought the food and asked, Are you 2 mercenaries? Frey looked at the food and beer on the table, his mouth watering since who knows when. The old man continued, Looking at the way you're prepared to enter the Hispania Mountains, it's obvious you're novices. The staff is shiny. The sword is by your side, gives off the feeling of knights, right? He ignored him and picked up the beer mug, taking a big gulp. The old man sighed. Well, it's not entirely a bad thing. The young have the right to dream. He was even kind enough to advise the 2. After you finish eating, you should go back. The Hispania Mountains are not a place for people like you. Isabel replied, I heard that place is a monster paradise. We've already anticipated the dangers. The old man replied coldly, Just dangerous, you say. Then his expression changed to a terrifying one as he warned, You don't know a damn thing. There was a hint of fear in her eyes. The people around also started to notice and gossip. Are those kids planning to go to the Hispania Mountains? Youth truly is wasted on the young? But Frey ignored it all, using both his spirit and body to enjoy the meal, even remarking, So delicious. The old man continued in a gentle voice, I'm sorry I also had a son about your age. He was very active, always running around everywhere. He said he wanted to be a mercenary. So when I saw you 2, I felt I should do something to stop you. She asked further, Where is he now? The old man replied coldly, He's dead, right after entering Hispania. Isabel's face turned pale. I'm sorry. The old man continued, It's all right. I'm not telling a story to get pity. He took on a mission to escort a mother and daughter to gather herbs. The daughter later returned alone and said, My son had lost his life. I don't want to be harsh, but you two shouldn't dream of Hispania anymore. Even the most seasoned warriors don't leave that place unscathed. That place is a living hell. After hearing that, she seemed to want to back down, but was startled when her companion, still disregarding the old man's warning, was thoroughly enjoying the food. Ah, the food is incredibly delicious. After finishing his meal, he even turned and asked, "Can you tell us about the monsters that might appear here?" As for Isabel, she was just starting to enjoy her food. Just as she took her first bite, her face turned pale because she didn't like it. What a strange taste. The old man, hearing his question, exclaimed, "Good heavens, you're going there regardless of the danger, aren't you?" He held his head, looking pained. "Damn it, I probably won't sleep well tonight." The food on the table had been eaten clean. He pointed to the map in his hand and began to tell the two about that living hell. After listening, she thought to herself, even though I was prepared, I didn't expect it to be this bad. Frey, on the other hand, had the opposite reaction. "Thank you, sir. How much is the total?" He stood up to pay full of spirit. The old man replied, "No need. I'll put it on your tab. Just remember to pay when you get back." He asked back, "If you do business like this, aren't you afraid of going bankrupt?" He just replied, "That's my business." It was dark. After finishing their meal, the two of them also stood up to leave. The old man walked to the door to see them off. They said their thanks. "Thank you for the meal." The sausage was truly a specialty, but their polite thanks were quickly exposed as a lie. What a lie. This place is famous for its terrible food. Only the beer is good. The old man saw them off, unable to bring himself to say, "I'll remember you two. If you come back, I'll prepare a much tastier plate of sausages." He replied immediately, "You said it, old man." The old man smiled kindly. After that, the two continued on their journey of discovery. The battle was extremely intense. The monstrous creatures with bizarre shapes had their body parts sent flying in all directions by Frey's slashes. The scene was incredibly cool. Isabel by his side was not idle either. She began to use magic concentrating lightning into a sphere and throwing it at the monsters. Very quickly, they were blown to smithereens. It seems this move also cost her a certain amount of energy. Frey became a bit quiet at this moment. Although they had successfully eliminated the monsters, this was just the beginning. She said, "The Hispania Mountains are just as the rumors say. We've only just entered, and already powerful monsters are blocking our way. Now, I understand why you brought me along. I'll learn a lot after training hard for a month here." Hearing that, he replied contemptuously, "That's not the reason." She felt a little hurt, her face darkening. He added, "Why would I bring you all the way here just for that?" She didn't understand and asked back, "Then, why?" He said seriously, "We're going to the Schweitzer dungeon." Isabel was shocked. The Schweitzer dungeon. "You mean the place created by the great mage, Schweitzer himself?" She added, "There are many rumors that whoever finds it will be granted the power to rule the world. But I only know it's a legend. How do you know if it's real?" He replied as he walked, "I know his personality. That dungeon won't be a cave or anything similar." She wondered, "What do you know?" On the mountain that pierces through the clouds at the peak, there's a picturesque lake with a small island in the middle. There we will meet again. Isabel still had a big question mark as she looked at Frey. The mountain that touches the clouds is probably the one called Mount Drake. The lake at the top is definitely a crater lake. That's his favorite place. Once we get there, we just need to find the island. He turned back and told her, "It's no exaggeration to call it a legend because it's an extremely terrifying place. To get there, you must be at least 6-star. Isabel was startled. 6-star? He raised his hand and said, "1 month? I will reach 6-star within that time." She asked back in fear, "Are you crazy? No matter how much you train, it will still take at least a decade to reach 6-star. He ignored her and continued, "We need to find a suitable place to train. Keep an eye out for a safe place where I can concentrate on absorbing mana," she yelled. "Are you even listening to me?" The sun was still blazing red, as if scorching everything. The two faced the next monster. It seemed to be an ice monster, and it was much stronger than the first one. Isabel took a deep breath to gather her strength for an attack, then looked over at Frey behind her. He was lost in his own world. She wondered, "I'm gradually getting used to fighting the monsters in here, but what is he staring at so intently?" Suddenly, he cheerfully exclaimed, "Found it." The two arrived at a mountain cave. She couldn't help but gasp in amazement at the scenery here. Before them was a crystal-clear waterfall churning and flowing. They exclaimed, "What a beautiful sight." They went inside the waterfall where there was a dry cave suitable for the two of them to cultivate mana. He took out a glowing stone and placed it at the highest point to serve as a light. "This place good. Are we going to train here for the whole next month?" While she was still doubtful and arranging her things, he called out, "Isabella, from today on, I will teach you the Cassidin fighting method you've always wanted." Hearing that she was extremely excited, "Really?" He maintained a stern tone. "I'm warning you beforehand. The reason I didn't want to tell you right away is because it's a very dangerous technique. If you just mimic it, you could even lose your life. First, observe carefully." Then he began to cast his magic. He waved his hand lightly, and glowing crystals flew around his hands. His whole body glowed as he sat in meditation. Isabel watched mesmerized, not even daring to blink. Outside, the scenery was picturesque. Inside the waterfall, a very captivating scene was unfolding. The male lead's entire body emitted a dazzling aura after his cultivation. He was demonstrating the Cassidin technique for young Isabella to see. She stared intently, thinking to herself, he's absorbing mana from the entire Hispania mountain range. He's channeling all that mana to fill every nook and cranny of his Dantian. Then a glowing spiral appeared. Outside it was dark because of the mana being absorbed by Frey. Inside the water of the waterfall also flowed with a beautiful purple hue. Day after day, his acupoints continued to receive mana from this ancient mountain. A moment later, he slowly opened his eyes and took a breath. The preparation step was complete. He glanced at Isabel, who was staring at him intently. She had also started practicing. He looked on in dumbfounded surprise, but then bowed his head in admiration. Although I had anticipated it, who would have thought the kid's talent exceeded my expectations? Above all, the kid has a limitless passion for learning. Isabel opened her eyes to see Frey looking at her with a sly smile. She was startled. What are you doing? He gave her a light push and said, Impressive girl. She finally came to her senses. Then he cheerfully invited her, Let's go eat. She blushed a deep red. Frey opened the magic bag, and inside a compass appeared with a 5-pointed star in the center. The magical items in the bag slowly materialized. He casually took one. He reached out, took one of the food items, and gave it to Isabel, telling her, Take it and eat. But she waved her hand, refusing. No need, I'm not hungry. You can save it for me to eat later. He didn't seem to care much, replying as he ate. Your brain is confusing manna with the feeling of being full. Then he offered it again, telling her to eat. Even if you feel full, try to eat. She took it and mumbled an affirmative. Then the two of them rested on a rug, slowly enjoying the dried beef. As Isabel ate, her cheeks were flushed pink. While Frey sat chewing noisily, she began to speak. Honestly, I never thought I'd spend time like this with you. I've always watched you and the unusual power you possess. You used to be a bullied student, but I was drawn to you. Maybe it was your aura, or your soul or something? I don't know either. He chuckled. Soul. She was silent for a moment, then continued. But lately I feel like you're not the same person you were before. I don't know why, but it's as if you know exactly where you need to go or what to do without any hesitation. He suddenly asked back, Who do you think is the real me? Upon hearing the question, she couldn't hide her surprise. Then she smiled and replied, No matter how you change, you're still you. He replied, People don't change. They just grow up. After saying that, he gave a cold laugh. Isabel sincerely continued, by the way. I also want to thank you for letting me train with you, just the two of us. Then her eyes widened as she remembered something. Her face darkened as she realized with alarm. Now that I think about it, will it be just me and him in this cave for the next month? Frey stood up, walked away, and reassured her. Don't worry about useless things anymore. I've said it. I'm not interested in children. She squeezed her eyes shut. Why do I feel so insulted? Then she turned to look at him staring at the magic formation and asked, What are you doing? He replied, Setting up a barrier. It wouldn't be fun if a monster wandered in while we were sleeping. She let out an "oh" with an unsurprised expression. Frey lay down. I'm going to sleep. This is just the first day. Excuse me for sleeping first. After saying that, he fell asleep like a log, snoring loud enough to break through walls. Isabel sat pondering. I know I shouldn't, but I really want to punch his lights out. The next morning, the scenery by the waterfall was just as beautiful. Isabel woke up after a long sleep. Just as she was rubbing her sleepy eyes, she heard his voice ask, You're awake. Frey had been sitting in proper meditation since who knows when. Isabel groggily asked, How long did I sleep? He answered, Probably about 5 hours. Then he said sternly, You won't get to rest this much in the future. Starting today, we will train seriously. We will practice the Kassadin training method, combat. He emphasized, I'll repeat it one more time. This is an extremely dangerous training method. Don't imitate, just watch me. As soon as he deployed his internal energy, his hair stood on end, and red and blue specks of light flew rapidly around him. A moment later, a small multicolored vortex was created. It began to move, and then slowly transformed into two elements, water and fire, swirling together to form a red and blue yin-yang symbol. She watched stunned. He's separating the mana in his body into two attributes, fire and water. The two opposing mana streams are struggling and tearing at each other, as if a battle is taking place between two monsters. His eyes remained closed during this process. One eye began to show signs representing the water attribute, and then a thousand-eyed, thousand-armed god representing water appeared. It launched a fierce attack on the remaining fire attribute. Immediately after the fire, God was also successfully summoned. That is to adjust the balance, so that neither side can overwhelm the other, as if harmonizing two opposing things. What an incredible method. Isabel was extremely intrigued when she understood the wonder of combat. So this is combat. She exhaled and began to follow the steps in order. She successfully deployed it. But unfortunately, she suddenly coughed up a mouthful of black blood, and then coughed violently on the ground. I only balanced it for a little while, and it already hurts this much. Looking over at him training with such a monstrous method, how can he be as calm as if he's meditating? Who is he? The water from the waterfall crashed down noisily. Below, Isabel was soaking in the crystal clear water. Under the water, her skin glowed white as if she were a precious pearl. After bathing, she went ashore to change clothes. Then she picked up the stones nearby and arranged them in a straight line. But then she pushed the stones to another side. She held up the largest stone. It turned out they were used to represent time. The small stones represented days, while the larger one was used to indicate weeks. She calculated 2 weeks have passed. Frey is still maintaining that state. When will he stop that terrifying training? She wondered to herself, her eyes seemingly filled with pity. Then she stood up, took her things, and went into the cave. While she was arranging her belongings, she noticed that Frey was still deep in his cultivation state with no sign of waking up. Isabel clearly noticed the mana is starting to materialize. That's a sign a mage is preparing to become 6-star. He reached that level in just 2 weeks. Unbelievable. I've never seen anyone's power increase this fast. His entire body glowed with a sky blue light. But he still wasn't satisfied. No, it's still too slow, faster and more efficient. She continued to stare at him without taking her eyes off him. Throughout the tense process, Isabel also began to cultivate. Outside, the rain poured down as if from a bucket. Combined with the sound of the flowing water, it became even more intense. On the rock she had arranged that morning, there were now 3 large stones, meaning 3 weeks had passed. Both of them had started to achieve certain cultivation accomplishments. Suddenly, she made a mistake in her cultivation process and started coughing violently again. She wiped the blood from her mouth, thinking to herself, the balance will be broken instantly, even with a slight distraction. But even so, my growth rate is also increasing at a dizzying pace. This is the result of the Kassadin combat training method. Did our ancestors always train with this intense method? It turns out that's why modern mages can't reach the same level as the mages of the past. Then she sniffed her body again, worried, do I smell? Then she was startled to realize the barrier is breaking, an intruder. As the explosion sounded, the protective barrier outside their cave was shattered. A fire monster appeared. Its appearance brought a completely oppressive feeling, causing even the brave Isabel to fall to the ground in fear. She stared intently, unclear. What is this? Before her, a huge monster, resembling a phoenix, stared at her with a cunning gaze. Frey also sensed the danger and woke up. He knew clearly this was a phoenix, hearing that she was shocked. A phoenix? Isn't that a legendary divine beast? But he seemed much calmer than her standing up proudly and looking at the phoenix with a determined gaze, unafraid. It seems there's going to be a fierce battle. She also guessed what he was about to do, constantly looking back and forth between the two. She still seemed very surprised by the existence of a phoenix here. I know Hispania is home to dozens of strange creatures, but I never expected a divine beast to appear here. While she was lost in thought, Frey had already extended his hand and slowly approached, saying it was attracted by the fire attribute mana from the combat method. Come to me. At his invitation, she worriedly reminded him. It's very dangerous. Humans can't tame divine beasts. The phoenix is a noble divine beast. Inside it lies an arrogant nature. There's no way it would easily accept a master who is just a small, ordinary human. He continued. Are you just going to stand there and watch? Didn't you come to ask for help? Isabel worriedly called out softly Frey. Then her eyes changed from fear to surprise. And yet the ancient divine beast the phoenix accepted, bowing its head to be cherished by a human. He gently rubbed its head and stroked its glossy, vibrant red feathers. She exclaimed, unbelievable. He's petting the creature with his bare hands without getting hurt. He answered her questions. That's because it has no hostile intent towards me. Don't mind that it's a divine beast anymore. Look, it has a large wound on its body. As he spoke, he showed her the phoenix's very deep wound. Its wound is so deep, it reaches its heart. The fact that it's still alive is a miracle. She was even more surprised phoenixes can die too. But they're phoenixes. He explained phoenixes are actually less constrained by death than other species. That doesn't mean they are immortal. After hearing him, she fell into thought, something that could inflict such a large wound on a divine beast is hiding somewhere inside this mountain range. Outside, it had turned dark. The rain hadn't let up at all. Heavy raindrops fell noisily, streaming down to the ground. Frey gently patted the phoenix's head and said to it, it seems you fought an opponent beyond your league. It's okay now. I can help you. The divine beast phoenix was now obediently lying on the ground, letting him pet it, looking just like a cute little puppy. Frey's eyes became excited. At the same time, the phoenix also slowly closed its eyes and fell asleep, its whole body emitting a mesmerizingly beautiful purple light, Isabel whispered. The phoenix is obediently listening to him. He suddenly asked, so you want to take the fruits of my training? The phoenix opened its eyes and replied, cuckoo. He continued, just kidding, hang in there, just a little more. He looked at it with a hint of affection in his eyes, seeing that she thought to herself, so he can have an expression like this too. Not just his expression, even his voice has changed. Now he's completely different from the person I know. The atmosphere around has suddenly become more peaceful. Frey closed his eyes. Suddenly a scene appeared of him, leading the phoenix up a cliff in a torrential downpour. He, now a bit stern, said to it, isn't today a beautiful day? It's just a few raindrops. Don't be scared. Below was a raging, churning torrent of water. He continued to encourage it. A great phoenix won't be defeated by a little rain, right? Hearing that it fluffed its feathers and wings and replied squawk, squawk, cuckoo, he immediately teased it further. Oh, really? What a fierce personality. Then he issued a challenge to it. Then let's race to the top of that mountain. The loser doesn't get to eat lunch. As he started, he even turned back to mock it. Oh, I forgot, you can't talk. Anyway, if you don't want to go hungry, then flap those wings with all your might. That's not right. The person just now wasn't Frey. He is Lucas Trauman, the greatest mage in human history. The one who challenged even the gods. That was his memory. Returning to reality, Frey opened his eyes and murmured, how nostalgic my old friend acted just like you. Isabel didn't understand. After his treatment, the old wounds on his body began to heal, a transformation visible to the naked eye. Seeing this, she happily thought, so the phoenix recovers faster after absorbing fire tribute mana. It pushed itself up, let out a cry, then flapped its wings and took flight, releasing a terrifying amount of power. Its roar made Isabel standing on the side unable to bear it and had to cover her ears with her hands. He gently touched its head and said, this is to thank you for bringing back some memories for me. From now on, be careful when choosing your opponents. It looked at him with eyes full of gratitude, then flapped its wings and flew away, as he watched with a hint of regret. After it left, only the two of them remained in the cave. He suddenly noticed one of its feathers was left on the ground. He exclaimed, good heavens, it didn't have to. Then he bent down and picked it up, a phoenix feather. It can be used to heal wounds or craft magic items. It's very expensive on the black market. Then he put it in his spatial bag. He surmised, it seems it's quite fair, unlike someone who hasn't helped at all, even though I've given her food and shelter for a whole month. Hearing that, she suddenly felt stung. Weren't those words directed at her? She uncomfortably questioned him, are you mocking me? Can't you talk to people decently? He didn't bother to answer. and closed his eyes to continue cultivating. She didn't bother with him anymore either. From night. Today, time outside continued to cycle. Everything was lush and full of vibrant life. The stones she used to count time had accumulated to 4, meaning the 1-month deadline was about to end. Inside, the two were resting after a long period of training. 4 weeks have passed. Isabel, while drinking water, stared at the still cultivating Frey with worry. He could pass out at any moment. He's been meditating like this the whole time without eating or drinking anything. Although this is a bit concerning, for some reason his mysterious appearance looks like that of an immortal in my eyes. She secretly praised him, truly an outstanding person. Even though his outward actions are always flippant, the cold and sharp demeanor he sometimes shows, the kind and gentle gestures towards the phoenix, along with his vast historical knowledge, and his words that show a mature and experienced person. It's as if the depth within him is exactly like that of an omnipotent great mage. The depth within him is exactly like that of an omnipotent great mage. A great mage. Then she was startled to realize his whole body was glowing red. It's happening again, but watching him like this reminds me of the great mage, Lucas Trauman. Could it be that I'm suppressing feelings of admiration and respect for him? He also coughed once. Her eyes widened in disbelief at what she was seeing. Just a moment ago, his entire body was red, representing the fire attribute. But now it had turned blue, indicating the water attribute. He opened his eyes and stood up straight. She closed her eyes and sighed in relief. After a month, he finally succeeded. She spoke up. Congratulations. You've become a 6-star mage. Frey stared at his hands. His whole body was still glowing with a beautiful aquamarine light. Frey stared intently at the palm of his hand. As for Isabel, she stared wide-eyed at his glowing body, unable to hold back her admiration, beyond imagination. The youngest person to reach 6-star so far was only 35 years old. If news of a student from the academy reaching 6-star got out, the whole world would surely be shaken. As for him, he closed his eyes to feel it. Now I can absorb mana just by breathing. But suddenly, he opened his eyes wide, and then collapsed to the ground. She yelled in worry, Frey. Then she ran up to support his falling body. Supported on her shoulder, he could only force a smile and say, Starving for several weeks might have made me too weak, she asked back. Do you want to eat steak? He replied. No, let's go hunting. I want some greasy food. She checked on his health first. Can you still walk in your condition? But he still arrogantly replied, Who do you think you're talking to? After that, the two of them went outside and headed into the forest. Arriving at a clearing, they saw many minotaur-like monsters had fallen to the ground. Isabel asked in fear, What happened here? The scene of their deaths was extremely gruesome. One even had its tongue lolling out. Its eyes rolled back white. He said while looking around. That phoenix. No wonder I didn't sense any monsters around while I was training. Hearing that, she smiled brightly and replied, It probably wanted to protect us. He recalled an old scene before he had joked with it. So you want to take the fruits of my training? And it had unhesitatingly replied, Cuckoo. He chuckled to himself. This creature had already said not to worry about it. We'll meet again if fate allows. A moment later, he said, Looks like we don't need to hunt anymore. After we eat, let's head straight to Schweizer's dungeon. Suddenly, in the quiet space, a person's loud scream echoed. Both of them were startled by the scream. They immediately recognized it as a human voice not far from here. Frey was a bit annoyed. Don't interrupt a man when he's about to eat, to Isabel's surprise. He immediately jumped towards the source of the sound, through a space that seemed to pierce the thin layer of clouds surrounding this place. She called after him, Frey. Before she could say anything more, he had disappeared into space, leaving her alone here. She wondered in confusion, what am I supposed to do now? Elsewhere, a person was trembling in fear. This person was crying nonstop and emitting weak cries for help. Help me. Next to his head was a dagger stuck firmly in a rock. It seemed, if he moved just 0.1 millimeter or more, the dagger would go right into his head. It turned out he was tied tightly to an ancient tree by a strange tribe. Not only him, but next to him were 2 others tied together. But both were already dead. Their deaths were extremely cruel, with daggers stuck in their heads, blood flowing endlessly. The barbarians laughed with amusement. You motherfucker, you can't aim for shit, and you dare call yourself the leader of Group 3 of the Skull-Axe Bandits. The one next to him chimed in. I heard he was planning to compete in an international shooting competition. So impressive. The one holding the arrow replied defensively, Shut up, Juan. Wait for me to slap you. Silly. Then we'll beat the boss, and it'll be over. While he was still dawdling, another guy came and snatched the dagger from his hand, saying, Get the hell out of the way. Victor, let me do it. The leader angrily yelled, Stop messing around. Let's go home, you game addicts. Juan replied. Just this last shot, the vice leader. Then he turned to the other guy and said, I'll definitely win this round. The leader, waiting, clicked his tongue and muttered, When is that old hag going to come? It's been a month already. He swore while complaining. How much longer do we have to wait our asses off here? Just as the other guy was raising his dagger to the sky preparing to throw, he didn't forget to show off. Watch closely, you noobs. I'll show you a bullseye. The bound person weakly screamed, No. Then Juan threw the dagger while yelling, This is for messing with us. The person screamed desperately, No. Just as the dagger was about to pierce his head, an unknown force knocked it off its original trajectory, sending it flying up and then tumbling to the ground. They hadn't even had time to understand what was happening, staring at each other in confusion. The clueless Juan turned to ask his comrades, Am I seeing things? Victor, the big idiot, was still laughing out loud as he walked up, patted his shoulder, and said, It was the wind. It's okay. You just have bad luck. Then he laughed smugly. Juan was trembling with anger. Damn that fucking wind. These guys are truly simple-minded. With such a powerful throw, what kind of wind could possibly knock the dagger away? If there was his, could they still be standing firm on the ground like this? Victor urged, pack up and let's go, or else the vice leader will... As he was speaking, he suddenly noticed a large shadow behind him. He jumped and screamed, "You scared the crap out of me. Who the hell are you?" The person who appeared behind him was Frey. He immediately drew his scythe and threatened, "You want to die?" Hwan also reacted quickly and drew his dagger. He just remained silent, looking at them with cold eyes. They were in an uproar. This guy, isn't he afraid of death? He looks like he's already dead inside. He glanced and saw the two corpses beside them. He growled, "Taking people's lives for entertainment. You bastards must be having a lot of fun, huh?" The clueless Victor asked back, "So what's your problem with it?" Without letting them say much, he had already started to act, beating them to a pulp. Very quickly, Victor's head was severed from his neck. The remaining two watched with dark faces, screaming desperately. The other guys also gaped in astonishment. Frey acted decisively. In the air, only scattered remnants of his magic net remained. One of them secretly realized five-star magic scythe of light. He smirked, speaking softly. "Class, please be seated. The lesson is about to begin." When Isabel arrived, she saw that Frey had already taken care of the guys. She asked him, "Did you kill them all?" Frey said one of them got away. He also has a tracking spell on him. Frey and Isabel both looked at the guy with two braided beards, Frey said. "They call him the vice leader, which means there's still a leader." Isabel asked Frey, "Do you want to wipe them all out?" Frey turned his head and said, "I can't turn a blind eye when I see them killing innocent people." "Demigod, are you happy seeing mankind hating and slaughtering each other?" Another person said, "I won't let you entertain yourself like this anymore. I always feel disgusted whenever I imagine you being pleased with something, no matter how big or small." The man tied to the tree finally spoke up. You saved me," Frey said to him. "I guess so. Unfortunately, you've lost too much blood, and we have no intention of taking you with us." The blonde man begged Frey, "I'm begging you. I can't die like this." He sobbed and said, I want to apologize to my father before I die." Hearing that Frey was also surprised. At a corner of a tree, the guy who just escaped from Frey had returned to report to the gang leader group, 3 has been wiped out by a ghost. The gang leader said, "Such good stuff. There are no ghosts in this world." The subordinate insisted, "It's true, boss. I really saw it with my own eyes." His hair flew with the wind. His thin, pale body stank. He's definitely not human. His fighting ability completely overwhelmed us. He can even summon a scythe from hell and reap the heads of my brothers. I was the only lucky one to survive." The leader said to the man with a scar on his eye right behind him, "A mage." The man with the scarred eye replied, "Agreed. Judging by this case, it seems he can cast 2 spells at once." The leader frowned and said, "A magic warrior." The man with the scarred eye said agreed. The gang leader stood up and ordered his subordinates, "Increase patrols. If he's spotted, inform everyone immediately. Then, we'll make a plan to eliminate him." The man with the scarred eye asked K-Boss, "Does this mean the Aquareed family hired this mage?" The leader ground his teeth and said, "That family of knights would lick a mage's ass." The leader turned to scold the guy who just escaped from Frey. "You guys were playing human darts again, weren't you?" The guy fearfully begged, I'm sorry, I was just bored at the time." The subordinate replied, "That guy is just a measly mercenary. You know him too, the one who led that mother and daughter to gather herbs." The leader thought he probably can't afford to hire a magic warrior. "So who is that guy?" In a forest on the ground, there were broken carriages and corpses of warriors lying scattered, along with the heavy breathing of soldiers. The leader spoke to a girl. "Come on, don't look at me like that. It ruins the fun. Do you know how long I've been looking for you?" The eldest daughter of the proud knight family, Aquareed, Sonia Aquareed. K's subordinates charged at Sonia. She fought against them alone. After dealing with TA's subordinates, she drew her sword and charged at Ka, yelling, "Die." As Sonia charged at Ka, the scarred-faced man stepped up and blocked her sword, which was aimed at Ka. The scarred-faced man used force to knock Sonia backward. Ka, feigning fear, said to her, "Phew, I think I'm starting to like you. You fight so hard and still won't let go of your sword." It seems the rumors about the flame sword of the kingdom of Lua Noble are true. The girls who were Sonia's people suddenly burst into tears and called out, "Milady, milady, Sonia!" A blonde cavalryman also called out to her, "Milady Sonia." Sonia looked at everyone with regretful eyes. Sonia's maids cried their eyes out and repeatedly called her Lady Sonia. The leader started to mock her. "Finally, it was worth the long wait of a whole month in that mountain. You're even more beautiful than I imagined." Sonia Aquareed. They say the eldest daughter of the Aquareed knight family has a talent no man can match. You're a genius knight who was given the title of Storm by the king when you just turned 18 or something like that. Sonia looked at the 2 girls and the cavalryman. She thought, "He has killed my entire escort. Only 2 maids and Lord Luther are left. Lord Luther has been retired for a long time. Now I'm the only one left who can fight. On the other hand, there are more than 20 of them, and every one of them is very strong. There's no turning back from this move, damn it." Ka asked her, "But I have a question. Where is your mage escort?" Sonia angrily yelled, "Nonsense. Do you think a prestigious knight family like us needs protection from lowly mages? The mages of today are all trash." Ka now remembered Sonia's words and thought, "Just as I thought, the guy who ran into my subordinates has nothing to do with them. A ghost? I'm curious to know what kind of person he is." Kay said to Sonia, "Don't be tense. We're not going to kill you right away." Sonia yelled, "What do you mean by that?" Ka dangerously asked her back, "Guess what?" I was being tactful and avoiding saying it directly. Sonia finally showed fear. Ka's subordinates approached Sonia and said, "It's not often we get a delicious noble lady visiting us. How could we possibly pass this up?" Sonia angrily said, "Vulgar. I'd rather bite my tongue and die here than become your toy." The leader didn't let up and said, "So what? Because if we don't have you, we still have the two ladies behind you. We've been living rough for a whole month just waiting for you. So all the brothers are very hungry. We'll probably save you for a long time, huh? Sonia thought bitterly. You sick bastards. So that was their purpose for keeping the maids alive. The two maids trembled, in fear, hugging each other. The two maids said to Sonia, We won't get in your way, milady. Lord Luther said. To die for Lady Sonia is an honor for me, Sonia said guiltily, Lord Luther. She looked at the sword in her hand and said, Because of my poor leadership, everyone has suffered. The two maids cried and said, Don't be sad, milady. We were raised under the roof of the Aquareed family. Please, milady. Please end our lives with your hands. If we are defiled by them, we will have no face. To meet our ancestors after we die, Sonia tremblingly held her sword and said, All right, hold your heads high and stick your chests out with pride, for heaven will welcome us. The leader suddenly asked hastily, Hey, wait, what did they just say? Sonia suddenly said loudly, For the honor of the two maids, for the honor of the Aquareed family. I, Sonia Aquareed, will send you two to a new horizon. The leader quickly ordered his subordinates, Hey, stop her, hurry up, stop her. As Sonia was about to strike the two maids, her sword suddenly disappeared from her hand. Sonia thought in astonishment, Where did my sword go? Who would have thought this ridiculous Skullax pirate crew was so formidable? Damn it. In the end, I still have to face the greatest humiliation for a night, Sonia said to the maids. Forgive me for not being able to give you an honorable death, the two maids cried, Milady. Sonia said, I, Sonia Aquareed, eldest daughter of the Aquareed family, order you to bite your tongues, and suddenly a voice rang out Lady Sonia. The leader also saw Frey appear and said, So you finally show your face, ghost. Frey appeared next to Sonia and held her sword, leaving her completely surprised. Frey and Isabel appeared unexpectedly. Isabel was also supporting the injured man Frey saved earlier. Seeing Frey appear, Say said, I've heard about you from my men. It seems you took care of my brothers quite neatly, huh? Frey threw the sword to Sonia and said, You're the ringleader, right? Kay furrowed his brow, looked at Frey, then pointed to the mountain and asked, Did you come from that direction? That's the direction of our main camp. What did you do to my men? Frey smirked and said, They're dead. What's the point of asking when you already know the answer? Kay ground his teeth and ordered his subordinates, You guys, fucking kill him for me. Don't give him time to cast a spell. Ka thought at this moment. Based on the report, he's just a combat mage. The physical condition of a mage is obvious, moreover, with our overwhelming numbers, Ka seemed to have underestimated Frey. Frey just needed to turn and cast a spell in the blink of an eye to create a powerful force attacking Kay and his subordinates. Frey's attack was so powerful that even Ka had to think, What is this pressure? In the blink of an eye. Frey had dealt with Kay's subordinates. Both Kia and Sonia were very surprised by this. But Sonia's suspicion was aroused. She asked, Who are you? What is your purpose? 4,000 years ago, when the great war between demons and monsters was still raging intensely. In a battle, many monsters were surrounding one person, rushing forward with a hunger as if pouncing on a lavish feast after many days of starvation. But that young man just gently waved his hand and successfully created a barrier that sent them flying, releasing an immense power. The sky was gray with dark clouds, and below lay the countless corpses of monsters defeated by the young man. However, this fight could not yet end, as the monster's comrades were still around staring at him intently